shaking, everybody. Welcome to another edition of House Divided. Damn right.
Oh, you damn right.
It means even more.
Wait, where is it? Hold on. There we go. Soul music only, Ketch. That's all we accept.
It means even more knowing that you were at the Foreigner concert last night. Woo. It's a different kind of hyped up the day after a big show.
Hey, I had to bust out the soul music only sign, which I found in a ditch years ago just outside of Waxahachie, because that is how I try to live, music that feeds the soul. And I did catch a little bit of that last night. Shout out to Foreigner and Loverboy. Loverboy was good. Foreigner was great. I was really overwhelmed by it. I'm so glad I went. Thanks to my lovely wife for convincing me to do that. We took our daughter. Great show from Foreigner. Also, for you Cowboys fans like me and Geoff, it is a positive day because it is Zack Martin in Oxnard Day, ladies and gentlemen.
Were you ever worried about that?
Not worried, not worried. Just like when it becomes official. I like that Jerry reached out and said, Zack, let's have some Johnny Walker Blue and we're going to talk about this thing. And they figured it out. More guaranteed money. Not quite to the Quentin Nelson level, but treat him like the stud he is. Zack Martin, welcome back to Oxnard. Now let's get to going. Now let's get that number one offensive line out there together and see what we got.
You know, the thing is, I always go back to the early 90s Cowboys, and it always felt like they had somebody showing up late in the best years, and it holds out into the second week of September. And then when he showed up, he didn't look like a guy that needed training camp. I think about when they get Charles Haley in a trade. Like, they just put him on the field on Monday Night Football. Go get him. Go get him, Charles. I always kind of feel like deep down, and I think football players know it, they need like 2.5 weeks, maybe 2 weeks.
Yep.
And then they're good. They really are good. So literally this entire time that Zack Martin has been out, there's been a part of me that's been like, I wish he'd taken some other guys with him. Like, they don't need him right now.
Right.
I don't need Zack Martin 2.5 weeks. And here we are.
Yeah, it depends on the level too, Ketch. It depends on the position. I just need to know for those guys, like, what do you need? And I think you're right. I think they would tell us, here's what I need, fellas. I need a couple weeks. I need a little, I need to start out with some of this. And then I need a little contact. And then I need a little full pads. And then, and then I need maybe like one preseason game. Give me like 2 drives. Then we can go. So whatever it is, yeah, not worried about it, but just glad it's happened now. Because somebody made a great point on the chat as we were talking Cowboys yesterday, and I totally agreed with them as I was watching the game. As long as Zack Martin is in street clothes, Dak Prescott is in street clothes.
Well, isn't that the best example that they really didn't need practice up until like right now? Right. Is the fact that they're like,
yes,
because there's not even as many preseason games as there used to be.
It makes no sense at all for Zack Martin for Dak Prescott to be out there if Zack Martin's not. That is rule number 1 right now for the Cowboys. I'm glad
that money grab, Chad.
What's that?
I said NFL teams got to get that money grab. That's ultimately what this is about.
Yeah, no, that's true. That's true. But yeah, that
because NFL fans will show up at a preseason game that nobody that's good is playing in, and they'll pay for the parking, and they'll pay for they'll do the spending will look like an NFL game, and the owners are like, well, we got to have as many of those as possible, and the players are always trying to eliminate them in the collective bargaining agreements.
Yes, hopefully one day they can get rid of those things. I know they can assess, roster guys or whatever, but yeah. Keep the quarterback on the sideline as long as Zack Martin is. Ketch, real quick before we get to Texas stuff, did you see this Zack Martin historical Cowboy stat that got thrown out with the story?
No, so give it to me.
Dude, you're going to love this. I didn't realize it was this level. Cowboys history of first-team All-Pros, okay? Zack Martin, reading from the ESPN story here, has earned first-team All-Pro 6 times in his career, tied for the 3rd most in Cowboys franchise history. Jeff Ketchum, Larry Allen had 6 of them. obviously a Hall of Famer. There are only 2 other Cowboys that have more first team all pro honors. They each have 7. Would you like to guess who they are? And I can give you a quick hint. Both on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, no, I know it's not Mel Renfro.
No.
I mean, it's not like DeMarcus Ware, is it?
Nope. Further back.
Just give them to me. Randy White.
There you go. The Manster, Randy White, and Mr. Cowboy, Bob Lilly.
Oh, my God. Yeah, okay. Duh.
So that's the list he's on. It goes Manster and Lilly, him and Larry Allen.
I wore number 54.
Ever.
You know what that is? That's rogue right there.
Woo!
I literally wore 54 in high school because I worshiped Randy White. Had a chance to meet him in person at North Cross Mall. No. Northgate. Like the one that was in South Austin back in the day. That mall. I can't remember what it was. It's been closed for a long ass time.
North Cross?
No, because North Cross was in North Austin off of what I'm talking about. There was a mall. I think it was like Southgate or Northgate or Northgate's A&M. Southgate Mall, I think.
Southgate, okay.
I think. There used to be a mall in South Austin.
Okay.
And he did a signing show there once. And I remember my mom asked him the dumbest question of all time. He was wearing a Maryland Terrapins t-shirt.
Yeah.
And so, like, my mom mentions, like, my brother lives up there. And she's like, why in the world would you have a Maryland shirt on? And it was just like, well, because it just was a stupid question. It was like, I think I was like 12 when this went down. And I can remember like wanting to yank my mom. Like, what are you doing? Come on, mom. Number 1 overall. Come on. He's from there.
This is why
why would you be wearing that shirt?
Yeah, this is why I've been playing old school my whole life. It's why my dad raised me that way, to think about the guy, but then where did the guy play? As soon as you started talking about Randy White, I thought of Maryland. It's the first thing that popped in my head.
So you can imagine my embarrassment with all of the things that you could have asked him.
I would have been mortified at that idea. Hey, Emmett, how come you got a Florida shirt on? Oh, Lord. Oh, my God. What are we doing? What's happening?
I still have those autograph cards somewhere.
Do you really?
I've signed them in a big old
White.
black marker. Just made it work.
Dude, I'd flip out. I'd have flipped out.
I want to let everybody know, hey, Peter Burns, SEC Network. This is an SEC show.
That's right.
Peter Burns is going to join us in the next hour. We'll talk Longhorns and Aggies and college football in Alabama. And, we'll just have a good old college football discussion with one of the best in the business. You and I have not talked to Peter Burns as a group in a while, long ago that he was doing local radio or television, I guess. Not radio, but television. Maybe both.
I don't think we talked to him since he got the SEC gig.
Yeah, he was in Denver.
Yeah, and he was incredible. We could feel that talent. So cool to see him go to this level. And then now he's become, the voice of SEC Network in a lot of ways. And he's so good at what he does. And I'm pumped about it.
He's a huge college football fan even before that. We also had him on to talk LSU football back in the day. So really looking forward to that. A couple super chat comments while I remind you, like the video, subscribe to the channel.
Notifications.
Get notifications. Chad, somebody yesterday said, sure seems like you guys are begging when you guys are asking for that. And it's like, well, no.
Yeah. Yep. I can do this if you want. Like when we do it, I can just do that.
I hope none of you guys, begrudge us trying to grow.
Yeah, please don't begrudge us that. Last week when I went with my parents to the piano bar, you know what the piano player had on the piano, Ketch? He had a tip jar.
Not mad at him.
I'm not mad at him. I put money in there because he was really good.
I'm just saying that don't begrudge us trying to grow the station and or make money.
Yeah,
which is another way of saying thank you for the super chat.
Yes.
Buck Wild getting in early. Buck Wild is like, I support the show. I want to give you guys super chats. Remind everybody that we do them. Buck Wild, Keelan Robinson goes back-to-back in scoring the first touchdown of the season. I will sell. Not anti-Keelan, by the way. I'm just like, what are the mathematical odds that would happen?
Yeah, since there's none of my money on the line, I'll buy. I'm a big Keelan Robinson fan, so sure, I'll say it's Keelan Robinson again. But obviously, the math would tell you to go the other way. To go the other way if you get the entire field on the other side.
I would say if somebody gave me good odds, 25-1, and maybe nobody would give me 25-1. But if you're giving me good odds on Keelan Robinson, it's a sneaky bet in Vegas.
Yeah,
right. I mean. It's not for even money. You don't want to make that bet. But if you were giving me decent odds, if someone gave me 20-1, I might put a 20 spot on that. Because he may be the very first guy that touches the ball on special teams. And it's very possible that he could get a touch on the first drive of the game. So it's not like the craziest thing ever. But I just think there are so many other guys that Texas in that opening drive of the game, second drive of the game, however long it takes for them to get into the end zone. It does, though, Buck Wild. As soon as I read the question, I thought to myself, well, no, sell. But quickly after that, if it was $20, your last $20, Chad, and you had to put it on the guy that actually scores the first touchdown of the season, who do you think scores first this season? It's one of those things that we'll ask like the day of the game, but I'm curious, like, any thought about that at all right now?
Absolutely. One thought and one thought only, Worthy. If he'll throw to him with a broken hand, that's the guy. Worthy. Until he proves he'll really spread the ball around, I believe he believes in that guy beyond everybody else. I think Sark wants to see Ewers to Worthy a lot, so I'm going to say the season starts with it.
I was going to say Arch Manning on like a 60-yard touchdown run, but
how dare you? There's what? Come on.
First drive of the game, secret weapon comes out against Rice.
I don't think Rice is not going to put second and third teamers out there for him to outrun. Come on now.
I'm thinking Worthy, or I'm thinking Jonathan Brooks. That
okay.
He's presumably going to run out with the ones at running back. He would be a guy that I think is it's very possible that he's one of these guys that if he's the guy that maybe touches it before the person who scores. Right. So it's, I think I would go with either one of those two guys. If forced to choose one, I think I'd probably go Xavier Worthy myself.
I'll tell you who I want it to be is Sanders. I want it to be Sanders right up the seam, show everybody you're going to use your tight end, show your freak off early. That's what I want. I want like a play from about the 12-yard line, and he just runs free right up the seam, and it's an easy touchdown, hand it to the officials, and scare the hell out of everybody.
Now, before we get to Jay Lee's question, that is a great segue to point out one of the things that we'll get into at some point today, ESPN and Pro Football Focus, I think on like the same exact day, because I saw what Chad was looking at, and then earlier today I think it may have even been a link that got emailed to me. Pro Football Focus came out with their top 50 college football players. I know on the Pro Football Focus side, Jatavion Sanders is the highest ranked Longhorn at number 38. So we'll get into these lists in a little bit. A lot of stuff to get into today. We'll also be talking, before I get to Jay's Super Chat, we were thinking about Billy Walton, the Texas edge player, who we will talk about momentarily, and kind of how big of a camp he's starting to have, that he's starting to get noticed. And we thought we would have a conversation about players who need to pull a Billy Walton, who over the course of the next week or so, especially in a scrimmage that, as Chad mentioned yesterday, Steve Sarkisian has told us that's the depth chart scrimmage. So that seems important.
Well, because if last week Ketch was the show me scrimmage, show me something, and the depth chart's coming up, if you didn't show him something, you're behind.
And you need to do it this week.
Yes, you're behind schedule. So get to squeaking so you can get the grease, to use that old cliche. Make some noise.
Because you know why, Chad? a show me performance on Saturday might not be good enough. It
Right.
may be that would just feel like they're thinking depth chart, and you just did something that you hadn't done all year. That's not going to make us put you on the depth chart.
Yeah, agreed.
So I told Chad I like the conversation because it is a reverse engineering way of how we can kind of talk about what hasn't happened at Texas practices so far. We get questions all the time about guys that we haven't talked about, and there's usually a reason why we haven't talked about them. So we're going to talk about them, and then who knows, maybe you'll just ask a bunch of Kelvin Banks and Xavier Worthy questions along the way. You can do that. Jay Lee in the super chat yesterday, you said, I could go neg with my overreaction, but I'm going to stay positive. The hype is getting ridiculous. Please help ground some fans.
Ooh, I can help do that.
Go for it.
In reading some Orangebloods reports, I think it was from Jason Sukamel today, but also seeing a little bit from Anwar as well. There's some mental mistakes happening at practice. There are some practice reports that have come in that, like the Sark told the team after the scrimmage last Saturday, correct me if I'm wrong, Ketch, that it needs to be, he expects it to be better this coming Saturday in terms of the mental side of it, in terms of being dialed in. Maybe you're tired. Maybe it's, not maybe it's hot. We know it's hot, but that part of it, if I'm a Texas fan, that would calm me down a little bit. That at times there's been just, everything not connecting in those practices.
I mean, yes, he wanted it all to be better. There was a level of sloppiness on Saturday that he says he didn't lose his,
Right.
And he told him, I expect all of this from today to be better next Saturday.
He gave him, I'm not mad, I'm disappointed, probably. Give him that parental advice.
Mac Brown, sidebar, because I was, I had hair back in the day. I was young.
Mm-hmm.
I was in my early 20s, mid 20s. Wait, how old was I? So he gets 98. So yeah, I was like 22 when Mac got the job. Mac had the ability to make me feel bad about something that I had done in a way. I did not have a father in my life. So Mac Brown would make me feel bad in such a way that I wondered, is this what it's like to have a father?
Oh, geez.
Seriously, swear to God. I will never forget when Jordan Shipley got injured the first time. So this is class of 2004, is just on campus. Heard about the injury. Called all of I called the Shipley family. Good relationship with Bob. Like I know people in the family. I wanted to cut off the pass at the internet because the internet was still kind of a new thing back then. And there was an internet buzz. And you used to work in radio. It would be like, there's this internet rumor. Remember, internet rumors were like things. I don't really remember the last time I got hit with an honest to goodness internet rumor, but back in the day were these internet rumors. So I was like trying to stop the rumor mongering at the time. Couldn't get a hold of anybody. I called George Walker, freshman wide receiver, who I had a really good relationship with. I called George up and I'm like, hey, George, I heard this thing happened to Jordan. Can you confirm that there was something that either did or didn't happen? He was standing next to either Mac or a position coach or Cleve. I don't know who he was standing next to, but he let me know, hey, man, we're going to have to talk later. I'm standing next to somebody. And then I got the phone call.
Oh, no.
And it was like, I don't remember if it was Bianco or Casey Johnson, but I got a few from both. So it could have been either one over the years.
You didn't get the direct call from Mac. I thought maybe you got the direct call from Mac. Ketch, can't have you doing it. People say we can do it. You can't do it.
It had to have been Bianco.
Okay.
Because Bianco told me that Mac wanted to have a conversation with me directly. in the
Ketch may not be
parking
our
lot
guy.
at the parking lot of the LBJ Library next to the practice fields. And he just had this way. So we were meeting face to face, and I'm young, right? Like I'm just a young guy getting started in the business. And he just made me feel so bad.
Mhm.
You understand the position that you put George Walker in, and he's just laying it out. And a lot of the stuff he's saying completely fair, but made me feel awful. And there were usually like one of those a year where Mac and I would piss Mac off, and either I'd get on the phone with Mac, and sometimes it'd just be silly stuff. Ketch, I heard that you were saying that Greg Davis wanted the offense in 2000 to be a little bit like the Denver Broncos. That's not true, Chad. That's not true.
Never said
It's
Broncos.
I was
Nobody
like,
said
Mackie went to Denver in the offseason to study the Broncos.
Just went to see some Rockies games. Didn't talk to the Broncos. Don't know what you're talking about.
To be fair, Mac is the guy that got us credentialed at Orangebloods, because he asked me one time, like, why don't you, he and I were in a dust up. And it's like, why don't you have the balls essentially to ask me this question? He's like, I do press conferences all the time. You're never there. Why don't you have the balls to say that to my face? And I was like, Mac, they won't allow me. They don't let internet reporters at press conferences. That day, he called John Bianco and got me credentialed. And they were like, we can't let you go to the games because we're not really going to acknowledge that, that we view you as legitimate, but you can come to any press conference, non-game related, and you can ask questions. And that's how it started. To Mac Brown's credit, he did that.
Yeah. All right. Fair enough. That's a wild little trip down memory lane. I like it.
I went all over the place on that one. Sorry.
You really did. You really did. All right. So back to the practice stuff and where this team is now, headed towards huge scrimmage on Saturday. Give me a couple guys in your mind, guys maybe you thought you'd hear about that you haven't heard enough about, guys that you thought were going to be in some reports you were getting and they just haven't been, that need to get that Billy Walton vibe, that Alfred Collins vibe we've been hearing. Give me some guys you're thinking of.
Well, for the entire list of guys, it was hard not. Let's just start with Billy Walton for a second, because we talked about him yesterday on the show as part of this freshman group that very early on in a variety of capacities is making an early impact on this team.
And for people who don't know, I looked it up today too. Billy Walton, edge out of South Oak Cliff, freshman, part of the 23 class.
Not expected to play this year at all. Quite honestly, like they've got 3 or 4 guys I think they'd want to emerge at that same position. And a lot of these guys have it. And some of these guys are on my list, quite frankly. But Billy Walton, one of the lowest rated guys in this class, but a guy that played on some badass, like state championship defenses that just were dominant. And he was the emotional leader and like a great player, but he has Colin Simmons size. But the sense always had been that maybe not a Colin Simmons elite level athlete. And yet he had a tremendous, on the show me scrimmage, he showed. And on this next week, leading into the depth chart scrimmage, he started to get some run with the second team defense, Chad. And it was like, oh, he's now potentially in the mix to be on the depth chart for the season opener. That's a move. Mm-hmm. And it made me think, who are the guys that haven't been making the Billy Walton move? So I don't think there is one at quarterback. I think if we just kind of go all the way through, I think you start at the running back position. I think we've talked about Jaden Blue a little bit.
Needs to make a little bit more flash right now.
Absolutely. And you would otherwise probably throw Savion Red into that, except he's injured with a shoulder sprain, out for a few weeks. He also would need to be in a position to do this, but he's not in a position to do it. But Jaden Blue, this is really big for him, because if Jonathan Brooks and CJ Baxter establish themselves in front of Jaden Blue in an early way this season, you wonder where's Jaden Blue's upside in the program. And Jaden Blue, that's a question that Jaden Blue has to answer for himself. If CJ Baxter is third team on week 1 or third team all season long, it's not a huge deal because he's a true freshman. 5-star running back, it would be disappointing, but I think there would be this sense everything's okay. And look how good Jaden Blue and Jonathan Brooks are, but that's not the conversation that we're having. And right now there's a 1-2 punch of Brooks and CJ Baxter working with the ones. You've got Keelan Robinson doing the Keelan Robinson stuff. And Jaden Blue hasn't made that move. He hasn't made the Billy Walton push. And yeah, there's a part of me that's wondering, like, okay, I don't know what happens with Jaden Blue at this point. I would have a much better answer had that kind of push happened, Chad, but it hasn't. And, in this day and age in college football, there, I think, are unintentional consequences for how these depth charts unfold. It's why the coaches don't like to release the depth chart. We joked about that yesterday here on the show, but he would be one of the first guys that would pop into my mind as he needs to make the Billy Walton push soon.
Yeah, it's interesting with the running back position. If I'm a Texas fan, deep down, I want to have guys fall down a little. I want to have some guys get lost because that means a couple guys really step up. Because if you don't want to feel like this is just a room where you got 4 guys, but you really don't have any. So it will be interesting to see how that all plays out. So receivers is obviously a huge talent area. Anybody on the receiver list for you? Because I feel like all the big names we would have talked about have either been really good or the reports have been, I'm not saying that guy's not good. That guy's still good. So is there anybody for you receiver-wise that needs to, make a play or two, have a one-handed catch, get that toe down this week?
There are, but there are a couple of true freshmen, DeAndre Moore, Ryan Niblett. Before we get into camp, there was a sense that this team probably will play with 5 wide receivers, unlike Tom Herman. It's not mass rotation. I mean, he'll play 5, but a lot of times Sark's playing 3, the overwhelming majority of the snaps. So you've got Worthy, you've got Mitchell, you've got Whittington. That's 3. Those are your 3 starters. And then you make room for Isaiah Nayor, who has backed it up in camp, so he's solidified himself in that area. You throw in Jonte Cook, who a lot of people think is going to have an absolute breakout season. Now we're at 5.
Mm-hmm.
And Casey Kane's a guy that's been getting some reps with the first team offense in the scrimmage on Saturday. That's actually 6. So there's a top 6. And at the moment, neither Moore or Niblett are in that group. What does it mean? I think both of those guys are actually going to play this season. I don't think they're going to redshirt. But I had been hearing a lot of Ryan Niblett buzz in the month leading up to camp. It hasn't quite happened yet. So, I don't think it's a bad thing for either player. They're the 2 guys that if they had a Billy Walton push, it, I think, would translate to some playing time, but I don't think enough of it has happened that I don't think we'll necessarily see either one of those guys get a series in the first half against Rice.
Before we leave running backs and receivers, let me talk about a guy that some may think of as both. What about Trey Wisner? I've read just a couple reports here and there, but it doesn't feel like he's really making an impact yet. Do you feel like this is a year where he can, or is he going to maybe need to wait till next year? Is it going to be more next year for Wisner?
It's next year. I think one of the things you also have to keep in mind, if you look back at what happened last year, if other than Kelvin Banks, if you didn't come in at midterm, then you didn't play during last season. So I think when you go through these positions, you got to remember who came in early, who didn't. I think really the issue with Wisner is there's just so many bodies in front of him. If Jaden Blue is trying to figure out how to get on the field at running back, and he's been here now for this will be his 3rd season. So, I think that there's just an expectation that I think Wisner could be playing really well, and I don't even think it changes his outlook. There's just too many mouths to feed at the running back position ahead of him right now.
I got you. Paxton chatted, Trey Wisner's a switchblade knife. I agree, Paxton, in the limited time I've gotten to watch him. I think he might be like the next Keelan Robinson type guy. Because I think you can do so many things.
I don't think he's that explosive, but he's very versatile. I mean, he's a guy that if you told me in 2 years is their third down back, makes total sense.
Yes. Yeah. Right. Making that kind of leap for him would be good. But yeah, that's interesting there. So this is obviously a tough receiver room to get attention in. There's just no doubt about that. So it's going to be,
who Wisner's got a little bit of Savion Red in him, in that he's kind of a tweener receiver running back.
Yeah.
So he gives you some running back. Or he gives you some wide receiver skill at running back. And, but he's probably not a wide receiver. So he's a blend between the two. The Keelan Robinson, I think, is a different type of athlete than he is. But I think the things that you probably would see them do are fairly similar in the offense. So I think he probably needs Keelan Robinson to graduate. And then I think he's a guy that will challenge for that kind of role.
So for you, anybody behind Sanders at tight end really needing to make a little noise?
No, I mean, I think everybody's given up on Juan Davis. It's not, nobody wants to say that out loud, but he is a guy that's he's an upperclassman now.
Yeah.
And if Jatavion Sanders and Gunnar Helm are your two starting tight ends, you'd like to have an older guy who's the number 3 guy. If one of those guys goes down, and he's just been banged up so much in his career, and I don't know. Like I was higher on Juan Davis as an athlete than anybody in the state. So because I was higher and ranked him higher than most, I really wanted to see the light switch come on there. It hasn't, and he's kind of in a rare category of players that he's like a poor man's Alfred Collins, in that Alfred Collins actually has shown a lot more on the field than Juan Davis has, but they're at that point in that career where it's like, I guess it's either going to have to happen now or never. And he's not really in a position for it to be now right now.
If you're just jumping in, house divided on this beautiful Tuesday. A lot of football talk going on. We're right in the middle of a discussion about guys that need to step up, in Ketch's opinion, in practice. Need to make a little noise because it's a big scrimmage coming to determine depth chart this week. Peter Burns of the SEC Network is coming up at 1:20. Alex Dunlap with his latest thoughts on the Longhorns, 18 days from kickoff at 2:20. We'll get your buy or sell to top of the 1 o'clock hour. I got a prime on prime buy or sell for Ketch that involves a birthday girl. Can't wait for that one. Plus, in the crap bag at 2, I want to talk Hard Knocks, and I'll get you an update on that Michael Orr story, which continues to freak me out. Ever since Ketch told me about it yesterday, I've been reading up on it, and it just gets weirder and weirder by the second. Plus, we have some lists coming up. ESPN, Pro Football Focus, throwing lists of their best college football players. I am shocked that I did not read a Longhorn name on my 100. I think it's in Ketch's, but I don't think it's in mine. We'll get to that coming up. But it is there's a lot going on in terms of Longhorn football. So we were on the offensive side, Ketch, and I don't think we hit O-line. Any O-linemen to you needing to make a little noise, needing to squeak a little bit for Sark and Flood?
No, I think,
because I feel like we're hearing about good position battles and backups, and it feels like there's some depth being formed, but I haven't heard about any guys that need to do something.
There was, Connor Robertson is a young guy at center who isn't quite ready. So he's on the third team, right? When we start talking about what they're doing at center, they're tinkering behind Jake Major. So he's the only offensive lineman that isn't really competing for, I think, a spot on the real 2 deep. Now, who knows? Maybe they'll officially list him on the 2 deep when that comes out first week of the season. But it feels like a guy like Cole Hudson might end up being either unofficially or otherwise the backup center they've tinkered with. Even Hayden Connor, they've done some different things there. Malik Agbo is a guy that I was kind of wondering about going into camp because it felt like we had heard about all these other offensive linemen, even Connor Robertson to a little bit more so than Malik Agbo. It felt like he had really struggled coming in, but now he's running second team right guard at times. He's being used as the that sixth man offensive tackle / tight end that we saw the Longhorns run a season ago. So he's finding ways to get on the field. So no, I think there's nobody on the offensive line that I think Texas is waiting on.
Okay.
I think they're okay there. I think everybody is exactly where the coaches would want them to be at a minimum at this point in their careers.
Okay. Let's get to this super chat because I think it can transition us to the defensive side. Michael, thank you for the super chat. $4.99 says we have high expectations for the offense. If the defense whips the O again on Saturday, does it concern you about the O, or does it mean the D might just be that damn good? It's the yearly problem for every fan base, Ketch, when you're talking about practice, because all the good news means bad news on the other side. Where do you stand on what happens if the D is still ahead considerably on Saturday?
I'll just go ahead and put this on the record right now. As a guy that has questions about Quinn Ewers, right? I mean, I do. I've got a couple of them. If on Saturday all we hear is that he was good in the red zone and short yardage, I don't know, there'd be a little part of me that goes, ooh, the biggest question mark I have for this entire team isn't really lighting it up in the scrimmages. It can be absolutely nothing. It could mean that the D might just be damn good, but there will be a little voice in my head that's going, uh-oh.
I think it could be both, right? I mean, I think both of those things could be there because I always want to hear my defense is good. I mean, as a fan, I always believe like your real confidence and your shoulders as a fan, I think that comes from defense. Because if you're getting smashed up there, who cares about the rest of it? But to me, here's the other thing, Ketch. When the part of your team that is most closely associated with your head coach doesn't look good, well, that's not good. So this team does not need to come out of fall and go into their season with everybody thinking, man, that Texas defense looks awesome. Don't know about that Sark offense, though. That's not what you need. This is his side of the ball. It has to look fluid on some level coming out of fall practice with a quarterback coming back, that much talent coming back. Come on now. It's got to look good.
My whole thing about this team is if you tell me that Quinn Ewers is great, and we'll do these ESPN lists in a little bit, and quite frankly, he's got to kind of be better than where the ESPN and the Pro Football Focus. He's got to be he's the number one overall prospect 2 years ago. The expectations are for him to be sensational. So if you tell me he's sensational, I'm going to look back at all of the Oklahoma teams under Lincoln Riley and Bob Stoops that had sensational quarterback play. And I'm going to go, nothing else mattered in the Big 12. Never mattered how good those defenses were or weren't. They couldn't win the playoff.
Yeah, ask Oklahoma fans about that defense that faced Georgia.
They weren't going to win that game, but they were going to win the Big 12. And it just came down to sometimes your quarterback play can be so sensational that nothing else matters in the Big 12. I don't know that that's a tried and true ingredient on the SEC level necessarily, although I would argue that we've seen quarterback play become more and more important in the SEC over the last decade or so, as opposed to the Greg McElroy days at Alabama, where it was like, hey, you can just have somebody hand off. Yeah. Complete enough passes. Don't fumble the ball when you hand off. You're good. You need a little bit more in that in 2023 in the SEC. But if Texas gets that from Ewers, Chad, I don't need anything else.
Yeah.
Texas wins double-digit games if Quinn Ewers is sensational. I'd like to just once going into the season have the headline coming out of a scrimmage be Ewers was sensational.
Right. No, that's what you want to hear. No doubt. It's the easiest thing to say, but I think that's got to be a need. If I'm a Texas fan, that's what I want to hear out of next Saturday. So,
hey, and Chad, real quick, can I just?
Yeah.
I think the example, because I think people are like, Ketch, Sark said he was really good yesterday. Like, why are you nitpicking? Why are you making something out of nothing? I guess I would say it like this. If Chad asked me when today's show is over, hey, man, what'd you think about the show? And I say, I think you were good in the 2:00 hour. What's the message to take out of that?
Something was going on between 12 and 2.
If you're asked about the starting quarterback and the coach goes, no, I thought he was really good in the red zone in short yardage situations. It's the same thing. You're leaving out the overall biggest chunk of the proceedings. I would just like on Saturday to be like, you know what? Wasn't great in the red zone, but tore those sons of bitches up otherwise. I'd be like, oh,
right.
Okay.
Yeah, and it is a football nerd reaction to that comment, but we all know there's a lot of football that happens in the middle of the field where it's something and 10. I mean, we just know.
2 long passes to Worthy. He threw a long bomb to Mitchell.
Right.
And they didn't do a whole lot in the red zone. They need to work on that. Like, I'd be like, go get your Big 12 championship game tickets. You know what I mean? Like, it's all I'm asking for.
No, that's fair. That is fair. So we'll continue to talk about that, and we'll get to the defensive side at some point about guys that want to flash. I wanted to get to these lists real quick. Ketch, you were just talking about Ewers. I just think it's important to mention here. As I pulled up this ESPN Top 100 college football players, this is all across the country, just to give everybody an idea of the top. Caleb Williams is 1, Brock Bowers at Georgia 2, Marvin Harrison 3, Harold Perkins at LSU, the linebackers 4, and Drake May is 5 at North Carolina. Ketch, there's 100 guys on this list. Quinn Ewers isn't one of them. The other name that surprised me, JT Sanders isn't one of them. Now, maybe it's because I'm a big tight end guy, but that kind of surprised me. In the top 50 on the ESPN list, not one Longhorn, not one. Top 50. First guy that shows up, Xavier Worthy, 59. Jalen Catalon is 83. Jalen Ford is 88.
That's obscene that Catalon is the second highest ranked Longhorn when he hasn't been on the field in 3 seasons.
And hasn't officially been on the field in that uniform, too.
Hey,
that just,
was Baylor Cup on that list, Chad?
What's that? Yeah, right, exactly. Like, what kind of banged up dudes are you throwing on this list? That surprised me, that only 3 Longhorns show up, that they were that deep into the list. No Ewers. I'm assuming that your PFF list contains Ewers and Sanders. Am I right?
You are wrong.
Neither one?
So I pulled up Pro Football Focus's list.
Okay.
They go Williams 1.
Yeah.
So you knew Caleb Williams was going to be 1. They've got Brock Bowers 2.
Right. Same thing. Yep.
Marvin Harrison Jr. 3.
Okay.
Blake Corum 4.
All right.
Which I think you could absolutely argue. He was maybe on his way to winning the Heisman until he got banged up at the end of last season.
Yeah. ESPN's got Corum top 10. Yep.
And then Pro Football Focus just goes total Pro Football Focus and goes with Joe Alt, offensive tackle for Notre Dame.
Nice.
You know, because it wouldn't be Pro Football Focus if they did the obvious and said Drake May from North Carolina.
Right.
They had to give us, you know, as a sophomore, he led all tackles with a 91.4 grade and a 91.0 run blocking grade.
Okay. Yes. Joe Alt was 11 on the ESPN list to give you a comparison.
Drake May is 6.
Okay.
We had that conversation yesterday that I thought maybe North Carolina was a little undervalued if you really believe that the quarterback play matters. Kool-Aid McKinstry, 7. Other names of interest before we get to the Longhorns. One name of interest, Jared Verse, defensive end at Florida State. I only bring that up because Texas fans he was a transfer that Texas fans were really interested in, and it just never quite got off the ground. But he was one of those guys that was like, he's from a small school, and it was like, oh, well, how valuable is this guy? And he turns out to be a future first-round draft pick for the Seminoles. You mentioned Harold Perkins. He's at 13. Boy, wouldn't both Texas and Texas A&M look good with that guy?
Yep.
Their defense.
All day.
He's the most Sergio Kendall player that I've seen come from the state of Texas since Sergio Kendall, because I really believe that if Harold Perkins was playing running back for LSU, he'd be maybe the best running back in the SEC. Wow. He was just incredible. Cooper Beebe, Kansas State offensive lineman, 16.
Good grief. ESPN had him at 27. 16 PFF.
Michael Penix Jr., who Texas fans will remember, 18.
Okay.
I'm scrolling. It's like, hey, where are these Texas players?
Exactly.
Why? Oh, hey, there's Dallas Turner at 26 for Alabama. We'll see that guy soon. J.C. Latham, 28, the offensive lineman. By the way, J.C. Latham playing guard, ranked ahead of Kelvin Banks playing tackle, is stupid. Pro Football Focus, if you're watching right now, there's a word that used to be fashionable in the 80s.
Oh, yeah, no.
That Tim Duncan likes.
The Tim Duncan word. Yeah, that's a Tim Duncan. Yeah.
I am mature in 2023, and I will not follow Tim Duncan's lead.
Yeah.
But J.C. Latham being ranked ahead of Kelvin Banks is the Tim Duncan word.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, now I'm into the 30s, and it's like, God, where the Longhorns supposed to be in a playoff team, right?
That's know.
What people are talking about. Hey, look, Bo Nix, Oregon quarterback, 34.
I saw that one.
I'm still scrolling. Then we get to 36. Jatavion Sanders.
There we go.
First Longhorn listed.
The highest ranked Longhorn for PFF is Sanders?
Yes.
Wow, it's like they called me to put together this list.
The number 2 tight end in the country by their ratings.
He's a badass. He should be on that list.
Then this is the one that kind of gets me.
Mm-hmm.
TCU cornerback Josh Newton comes in at 47. I don't begrudge that, but he was their second best corner last year.
Mm-hmm.
He's ranked ahead of some important Longhorns. Xavier Worthy comes in at 48.
Wow.
And then there's no Quinn Ewers. There's no Kelvin Banks.
No Banks on my list either. That surprised me.
That blows my mind because for my money, Kelvin Banks is the best player on this team.
Yeah, but see, what this does, Ketch, this is such great bulletin board material for you Texas fans that are worried that there's too much of that poison cheese or whatever analogy. Mac Brown used to talk about the poison cheese, and Nick Saban likes to call it rat poison and all that. Man, I think there's a lot of ammo here, Ketch. I really do. Showing your guys these kind of lists and then do what you
do that, though.
No, but I'm saying do what you just did. I'm scrolling. Fellas, we got to get all the way down here. This is the respect that they are giving. I mean, just to get a little edge on them, right? So they don't think everybody's talking good about them. It's like, no, fellas, they're not. Hey, Zero, you're not even on this list, and you're all the way down here on this list. Hey, 3, you're not on either list. You've gone through all that work and they're not even noticing it. You need to show them what you did. I mean, just all that little stuff. Kelvin Banks is a great example because we know what kind of leader he can be. Just put the idea in their head. Give them a little extra something.
Well, the funny thing is the coaches won't do this, but their dads will.
Yeah, exactly. Their dads, their moms, their grandmothers will. They'll look at the list and go, hey, baby, how come you're not on this list?
And consequently, Xavier Worthy's mom might say, hey, honey, you were on these lists, but like Everybody else will be like, Kelvin Banks' parents are pissed, I think.
I would be.
Like they've printed out these articles and circled the names of the other offensive linemen ranked ahead of him.
Yep.
I can't believe that J.C. Latham at Alabama got ranked ahead of Kelvin Banks. One plays left tackle and played against like 5 first-round draft picks last year.
Yeah, and did really well. Too.
Yes.
Didn't just kind of show up. Really, really made an impact as a young player, and then to get this little attention, I'd take it personally if I were him.
I would. Kelvin Banks should print the list out and like put it inside his helmet. During games.
Yeah. For this ESPN list, Ketch, there are 4 guys that Texas will face this year in the top 50, but no Longhorns.
So who are they?
That'd make me
mad.
Let
me see if I can guess them.
Okay.
So Dallas Turner would be one.
That is correct.
Kool-Aid McKinstry would be the other.
That is correct. He's the highest rated at 12 for ESPN in terms of these guys. There's 2 others.
The offensive lineman, Beebe from Kansas State.
That is correct. He's 27. This other guy is 44th on the list.
They put Jalen Daniels in there?
Very good. Jalen Daniels of Kansas is 44 on the list. And Texas fans, your quarterback's not on it at all.
Well, and he needs to be. You know what? He hasn't earned the right to be in a top 100 yet. He just wasn't anywhere near that good a year ago. But if Texas is going to win the Big 12 championship, he's got to be in the top 50 of both of these lists at the end of the season.
No doubt.
When ESPN and Pro Football Focus come out with their end of the season top 50 or top 100 players, Quinn Ewers got to be near the top. And if he is, Texas is going to win the Big 12.
Yeah.
They can't make a run at the playoff without him being an elite player.
Yeah. Hey, by the way, speaking of the playoff, did you catch that little piece of news coming out of CBS land that Brian Jones is picking the Longhorns to go to the playoff? Did you catch that?
I saw that. I thought of you. I wondered if you were going to ask for a screenshot of it.
Brian Jones, over the last 2 to 3, 4, 5 seasons now, he's been known for throwing one team into his playoff prediction that never gets close, that just falls apart, it feels like, every year. So there are some Texas fans maybe wondering about
Alabama this year.
You're right. Exactly. I'm sure it's Georgia this year. But Ketch, just to get you the update, I did reach out to Mr. Brian Jones to see if he might be interested in coming on the show. And I just want to make sure I'm doing that. I explained to him what's going on. I told him I saw the prediction, and I asked, do you think you could carve out some time each week for some bald white dudes? His response, congrats on the new venture. Yeah, man, anything for you. So
he loves you.
I think Brian Jones is a distinct possibility. We'll talk about when we can get that on. I'm going to love if we can get Brian on this format so we can see him and hear him, so his language can be as flowery as he needs it to be, and so we can see the beautiful, sexy Santa Claus beard that everybody gets to enjoy on CBS. But we also need to find out, Ketch, what is it that he really is seeing with Texas that he's putting them in the playoff? If I'm not mistaken, he went Georgia, Michigan, Ohio State, Texas, I think are his 4.
I did not remember.
I think that's right. Yeah, I think I
was so caught off guard by Texas that everything else was a blackout.
Yeah, it was Georgia, Michigan. Maybe it was Clemson. That third team is a little fuzzy in my head. But anyway, we are hoping that we'll figure out Brian Jones. And I would really hope that during the season, we can carve out a time each week for him to come on. It's going to be his last season with CBS and the SEC as Texas heads to the SEC. CBS is going to be heading away from the SEC, but we can't wait to talk to Brian. So just so those of you that are a little concerned about maybe how much love your Longhorns are getting, that one may concern you a little bit, that Brian, as well as Danny Cannell, I believe, of CBS, Danny also picked the Longhorns to get to the playoffs.
I feel like everybody's taking crazy pills.
Yeah, it's feeling a little extreme. It's feeling a little extreme, but it is also 18 days to kick. It is that time of year where the summer heat gets to you. And two of my favorite fan bases, Ketch, the Longhorn fans and the Cowboy fans, get particularly nuts right now. Right now, before real football's been played, before impactful football has been played, they start to get nutty. And they'll lean over to you and whisper, I think this team's going to the Super Bowl.
Oh, every year.
I'm going to bet my mortgage. Easy, dude, calm down. And
I'm
on the other side,
a second mortgage and put it all on the Cowboys at 19-1.
And on the other side, what do they do for Texas? They do exactly what Keelan did the other day when he joined us. They go, hey, not only do they win in Tuscaloosa, double digits, 2 touchdowns, easy. Whoa, calm down.
All right. Look, Chad is going to make me laugh more in hour number 1 in an effort so that at the end of the day, when he asks, how did you think the show did or how'd it go? He doesn't want me to say, well, you were good in hour number 2. So all that to look forward to. Buy or sells next. Peter Burns in 20-ish minutes. About to send him a link to the studio and everything. Can't wait to talk some SEC. Don't you dare go anywhere. In fact, tell all your friends during the break to log on because we're about to have Peter Burns join the show. We'll be right back. This Orangebloods recruiting flashback takes a look back at the single lowest rated recruit of the 2020 recruiting class and one of the 5 lowest rated position players that the Longhorns have signed in the last 5 recruiting cycles. That's right, I'm talking about senior All-American linebacker Jalen Ford, a lowly 3-star prospect who ranked as the number 127th ranked player in the state of Texas per Rivals. Yeesh. Ford's recruitment began in earnest in the spring of 2019 when he picked up 16 offers by the end of May, including Power 5 offers from the likes of Kansas, Minnesota, Utah, and Texas Tech. Still, the recruiting services paid him no attention. After taking unofficial visits to Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, and Hawaii, Ford took his first official visit to Texas Tech in late May. Quote, "This is my only official visit for the summer," Ford said at the time. "I'm looking to visit Washington State and Utah early in the season, so maybe I'll be ready around September, then make a decision and announce my commitment shortly after that." True to his word, the trip to Utah proved to be a game changer for Ford as he committed to the Utes on October 8th of his senior season, right after taking his official visit to see the Utes. Very quietly, though, the Longhorns became involved in his recruitment a month later. After Texas assistant coach Tim Beck visited Ford at his high school, Tom Herman called him a week later to offer a scholarship. Ford did a good job of keeping the news of Texas's interest under wraps. In fact, in early December, Ford told Orangebloods that he hadn't even been talking to the Texas staff. At the time, Lone Star was alive in the Texas State playoffs, and Ford said he wanted to remain focused on his team's playoff run. Once Lone Star season came to an end on December 14th, Ford began to focus on his upcoming decision, and he finalized the decision to commit to Texas a week later. "It was really right before I was going to sign," Ford said. "At that point, football is over. I finally had some time to sit down and think. The day I didn't sign, the first day of signing day, I had to call Utah and Texas. It was a little bit chaotic." On December 23rd of 2019, Ford committed to the Longhorns, and the rest is Texas football history.
By the way, Ketch, quick clarification for the people that may have watched or listened to me and watched on radio for the years. Normally, if I wear the Ole Miss shirt, it means I lost a bet. Today, I'm just supporting Michael Orr. That's the goal of that. I did not lose a bet, but in support of Michael Orr, I thought I'd throw on the Ole Miss shirt today. Got this
Aren't
back.
They participants in all of this, though?
They are. Well, I mean, in all of this, I would say no.
It feels ugly to me, Chad.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything that's implicated Ole Miss. I feel like the Tuohys are definitely implicated, but I don't think Ole Miss is the issue on this thing right now. So I'm going to support Michael Orr until I have a reason not to. I feel like the big man may be getting screwed. We'll give people some additional information on that coming up at 2 o'clock in the crap bag. We got Peter Burns coming up at 1:20. We were about to play buy or sell, and we thank you for joining us for House Divided on this Tuesday, 18 days away from Texas and Rice. Also, you will notice over here in Helmet Land, Florida State and LSU, that first weekend, we got that one all set up for you. That one is Labor Day Sunday. So we are 19 days now away from that one. So we're having a good football conversation, talking Texas practice, talking about guys that need to make a little flash, make a little get a little attention, make a little noise this week to get Sark's attention as we get towards the all-important depth chart scrimmage this Saturday. All right, Ketch, you ready to go buy or sell?
Yeah, you go first. I want to make sure that I get Peter Burns
Okay.
the information that he needs.
Okay.
And I sent my stuff in.
Do we need to filibuster here? Do we know you want to
No,
filibuster?
I just said you go first.
Okay.
Because I sent my stuff into Blake late.
Gotcha.
I didn't know how ready he is. So you definitely go first. And I just sent the link to Peter. So we're good.
Beautiful. All right, here we go. Buy or sell on a Tuesday. Ketch, we will start in the NFL. Buy or sell. You agree with me. Hard Knocks, episode 1 drew you in. You can't wait for tonight.
Sell, haven't watched.
So
Let me tell you what happened to me, though, Chad.
Yeah.
I got locked out of HBO Max.
Okay.
And I was too lazy to go through the login steps. I just watched something else.
Okay. Coming up at 2, I'll tell you why I enjoyed episode 1. Why
I'm okay with spoilers. You don't have to worry about me.
Okay. I'll tell you. You can still go watch it, but there's some great moments they give you. I can't wait for episode 2. All right. So buy or sell. Number 2, bottom line, Texas should have at least one guy in a college football top 50 list of players for this year.
Buy. And the 2 I would say at least 2. For me, Kelvin Banks is the best player in this program right now. I would have him no less than 50. And then I think Xavier Worthy and Jatavion Sanders both make really compelling cases. So for me, those would be, and we haven't even mentioned Jalen Ford's name. He was an All-American a year ago. He also, it's hard for me to believe that a guy who was an All-American linebacker last year, presumably in the top 66 players in the country last year, right? 22 first, not including kickers and punters, 22 first team, 22 second team, 22 third team. He made All-America honors a year ago. How's he not in a top 100? So,
right.
Yeah. Maybe even top 50 if you consider, Chad, that a lot of those guys that would have been in the top 66 a year ago left for the NFL, graduated, are no longer otherwise playing college football.
Hey, real quick, Blake, grab that chat for later. The one of Brandon talking about or might not be the innocent victim. Grab that for 2 o'clock. I want to get into that one a little later. Speaking of, Ketch, buy or sell. If all this Michael Orr stuff is true, the movie needs to get cancel cultured until Michael gets his money.
Buy. I mean, if they've got points in their, one of the stories that came out yesterday was each member of the family made $250,000 and got points on the movie, which means they're still making money on the movie. Into foreverdom. So yeah. I don't know what the answers are, but there's just a whole lot about that feels icky. And yeah, icky.
Catch that money. That movie made over $300 million in the theater and even more once it went other places.
Yeah.
Digital and everything. That movie made a ton of money.
Yes.
Number 4, Catch. Let's go back to the Longhorns. Buy or sell. JT Sanders will have twice as many catches as Keelan Robinson has rushing attempts in 2023.
Buy.
Yeah?
I got JT at 65 catches this year.
Okay. If it happens, that will be 2 years in a row. Last year, it was 54 catches and 25 rushes for Keelan Robinson. And finally, Catch, here we go to the birthday girl. Today is 33 for Jennifer Lawrence. Let's go buy or sell. Prime on prime. Jennifer Lawrence over Cameron Diaz.
Ooh. God. I think Jennifer Lawrence is hotter right now. I think Jennifer Lawrence has had a longer stretch of peak, like sexiness.
Uh-huh.
But I'm going to sell, I think Cameron Diaz at her absolute peak
Ooh, interesting.
was when she's in the mask and she's in that dress and she's dancing and like, I'm in.
Yeah.
As hot as Jennifer Lawrence is, Cameron Diaz circa Mask when that movie came out, very tough to beat.
I think ultimately I would buy. And by the way, for J-Law, I did see this recent movie, No Hard Feelings. I really liked it. If somebody's looking for a different kind of movie,
I've been on the verge, Chad, for 2 weeks.
It was really good. And here's the one thing I would tell you to maybe draw you towards seeing it. You get a full frontal nudity scene with Jennifer Lawrence, and you'll be left laughing out loud. It's fantastic. It's fantastic.
Is that the one where she is like hooking up with a kid?
Correct.
Okay.
That is correct. But there's a couple scenes in that movie that are laugh out loud good. She reminded me of Diaz in the movie, which is why I made the comparison. She had that kind of feel to her, the comedic timing, the comedic chops, plus she's hot. I really enjoyed that movie. No Hard Feelings. Check it out. All right, Ketch, hit me.
For some reason, I was thinking I've known about that movie and I got the title mixed up. And so now that it's like on Amazon that I can stream it, I've been convinced that was Julia Louis-Dreyfus in the movie. So I've been like, oh, am I really ready to watch it? Like, am I in the mood for Julia Louis-Dreyfus?
Yeah, she's not.
Now that I know that I've got the movies twisted, and I heard good things about that movie. So
yeah, it's good. Matthew Broderick is the dad. Thumbs up. It's a thumbs up.
Check that out before the week is over.
There you go.
Before Hard Knocks, too soon to know. Buy or sell. Number one, Blake, I apologize for being so late and getting my questions in. Chad will chuckle at the mere mention of me turning questions in right before the show. Buy or sell number one.
Yeah.
You're disappointed that Dalvin Cook isn't a Dallas Cowboy.
Absolute buy. I think the Cowboys should have made that call. I think they should have gone in right about the price that the Jets ended up paying. That's what I wanted them to do. And yes, I am disappointed.
Buy or sell number two, Zeke Elliott will get 1,000 or more yards rushing with the Patriots this season.
Whew. Good grief. For the sake of me being still kind of a fan, because I'm a Cowboys guy, I'd love to buy that, but I'm going to say sell. I think it's going to end up south of there. I need to see how they'll use him, how they'll, I trust that system to do something with him. I don't quite know if it's 1,000 yards of something, so I'll sell.
Okay. I just want to see how high you might be willing to go. Buy or sell number three, you agree with me. Kelvin Banks is UT's best player. You don't have to.
There's some other guys in a discussion, but right now, if we're just, guy for guy, position for position, I'll buy that. I'm a big fan of blocking and tackling, blood and guts football. So yeah, let's make Texas fans feel good that the best guy on their team might be that guy, the one that's supposed to protect your most important guy. Yeah, I'll go with Banks.
Is he the first guy you draft?
Right now?
Like if you were doing a player draft going into this season and you were building a team from scratch, because this takes into positional value and, he's a left tackle, so he's incredibly valuable. Would you take him over Quinn Ewers?
Yes, because I know more. I think I know more about where he projects in the pros right now than I know about Ewers.
Buy or sell number four. Deep down, Loverboy is overrated and Foreigner should have had a better opening act last night.
Yeah, I got to say buy, and I'm not dogging Loverboy for this because I enjoyed the show. It was good. I got to hear Hot Girls in Love live, and I got to hear some of that other stuff I wanted. Something's going on with Mike Reno, Ketch, and I don't know what it is. He has gained some weight. People have observed that, but it's his lack of mobility that's got him antsy about his voice. He hasn't lost it. I think he's still got the pipes, but they mix him down too far, and he's lost confidence, and that's what makes Loverboy fall down a little bit. When Foreigner hit that stage, it was a massive contrast. Foreigner puts on a hell of a show right now.
Wow, didn't know that. Like foreigners still banging it out, huh?
I was impressed. I'd never seen them. I wanted to check this off the list. And yeah, it was really impressive. Their singer, I wrote my man's name down so I could say it. Kelly Hansen is his name. That guy's got great pipes, great energy, great appreciation. He got emotional multiple times during the show while talking about the finale, the farewell tour. I was wrapped up in it. I love the stuff. It was good.
And finally, buy or sell number 5. You don't like this Michael Oher story because it unintentionally harms Austin's own Sandra Bullock.
Yeah, huge buy here. This is supposed to be a great story that was partially, blown up by the fact that a legend like Sandra Bullock. Has anybody seen what Mrs. Toohey looks like? No disrespect, but she knows she don't look like Sandra Bullock. She must have been so happy when she found it out. And my man was happy about Tim McGraw too. That's what movies are for you to go, wait, who's playing me? That's awesome. Yes, buy, because we do not need any staining on a Texas legend, on an Austin area legend, on a, McConaughey friend legend, all that Sandra Bullock is. I don't need this mess around her. We got to clear this up right now.
Yes, I'm with you.
Man,
I hate that it leaves any kind of mark at all on what is otherwise known as like a landmark moment in Sandra Bullock's career.
Yeah.
By the way, if Sandy, or not that I know her on a level that would allow me to call her Sandy, but I'm such a big fan, I do it anyways.
How about
Sandy, if you're watching, our thoughts and prayers and all of our best wishes and feels insider for you and everything that her family is going through right now. They suffered a loss last week, Chad.
I didn't realize that.
While bringing up Sandra on the show, it's hard not to at least know that she's in the middle of a really tough stretch right now. So anybody that knows Sandra Bullock, at least half the show's thinking about her. And now that Chad knows that, the entire show is thinking about her.
Absolutely. I didn't realize. And hopefully if she's going through all that stuff on the real side of things, hopefully this kind of story does not add anything to, to what she's dealing with. I would hope that, like, does her publicist and does Sandra Bullock have to deal with anything off of the Oher story? I hope not.
I'm going to guess no, partly because I think what she's been going through in the last week and a half, 2 weeks, I forget exactly how far it goes back. She lost her partner. Partner died of like a long, years of, I think, illness, passed away.
That's terrible.
And, on the other thing is she always just seems to be kind of above all this. I was thinking about this earlier today, like Sandra Bullock never involved like in anything that I can ever remember.
No.
I mean, even I've been involved in stuff before. Sandra Bullock just always stays above it, stays above the fray.
I don't remember Sandra Bullock ever sending a tweet that got the attention of the AD at Mississippi. I don't ever remember that.
Of course that dude took the A&M job. I'm convinced he became whenever a president, every president, there's a moment when they'll say, and that's the moment so-and-so became president of the United States. I'm convinced that the night that Ross Bjork saw my tweet, I'm convinced he probably had a few bevies.
God, I forgot that was him.
It was late. It was late.
Yeah, it was late.
And he fired off that tweet. I'm convinced that that's the night that Aggies went, you know who could be my AD?
It just may be our guy.
That guy. When has our AD ever stood up against Geoff Ketchum on social media and called out his bullshit? No, never.
Bowtie never did that.
Bjork's the man. And then he gets the job. There are no accidents in this life.
Oh, my God.
By the way, the way that story ends. Wait, hold on. We got a Google Scholar super chat. The teams remaining in the Pac-12 by December will see a massive portal raid on their roster, effectively ruining what chance they had left to survive. I mean, maybe. I feel like before we get to December, the fate of those 4 schools will be decided. I don't know what awaits them. But yeah, I mean, Google, that's on the table.
Yeah, the thing that makes the most sense to me with those 4 teams is, I mean, I don't mean it as a joke, but it's going to the Mountain West. If there's no Pac-12 anymore, then it's them joining the Mountain West. I think that gets them to 16. That would make sense. Those teams playing those teams, go look at the Mountain West list. That's going to make sense to you. Like that, it feels about the same.
If you're Stanford's the one, they got to be able to do better than that. They're Stanford.
Yeah, they feel you're right. Everybody else, right? Cal, Washington State, and Oregon State might nod along with me. Stanford is not going to. Stanford is going to be sitting there shaking their head and folding their arms like, really, Chad? The Mountain West? How dare you?
Seriously.
Yeah.
I'm how daring you for them.
Right. They'll have a point. I get it. I just don't know where to put them if the Big Ten, because my other idea would just be, all right, Big Ten, you're already going there. Just make it 20. Just make it 20 teams, grab Washington State and Oregon State and take those rivalries with you and go to 20. But then where do you leave Stanford? That still leaves Stanford out. I don't know where to put them.
I look at Washington State and Oregon State, and I think to myself, you guys probably should be Mountain West teams.
I agree.
You might be, sometimes it's better to be the king of a small hill than the pauper in a big city.
Yeah.
You go to the Mountain West, you might suddenly be the king on the block. You're formerly of the Pac-12. Ooh. I don't know. But if you're Stanford, you go independent at that point.
Yeah, I was thinking that too. That's maybe the answer. Go Notre Dame's route and let Notre Dame and Stanford be an independent rivalry.
Because if you're Stanford, you'll fill out a schedule as an independent. And then probably your other sports, you do have to join a conference. Maybe they do what Notre Dame did, but God, you can't go to the ACC. They might have to in their other sports. If you're the Big 12, would you just take one more team? If it was Stanford, non-football.
It's a hell of a question for your Mark.
That's one more team.
Yeah.
It's Stanford. You're adding all of those other Olympic sports, the non-revenue sports. It will make your conference look better, and you're not necessarily giving up football revenue.
But it gets you to where are they now? If they bring those other teams in, aren't they at 16? 17 be a weird number, though. Then they'd have to add more.
It's for all these other sports. Some of these, the Big 12 doesn't have 10 baseball programs.
Right. Okay.
Or I guess they do, but back in the day when there was when college, you know what I mean? The Big 12 has existed in a form. There's no Texas Longhorns wrestling program. So every year when Oklahoma State wins the Big 12 championship in wrestling, it's like 4 teams.
Yeah, they don't beat Texas to do it. Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I might think of even grabbing Stanford in football. I mean, you already got
Stanford's in sports, Chad, that I don't even know if the Big 12 has.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. But they already got 4 teams headed out west anyway. Like, you could still have Arizona and Stanford. You could have Arizona State, Stanford, Colorado, Stanford. Like, you could still have games that have a Western feel, and you get that incredible academic, and reputation to come along with it. That's not a terrible idea.
Stanford is like, there's a girl that you've dated in the past that you don't like, but they've got a really cool sister that you do like just kind of hanging out with. The family too. It's like, forget about the main part, right? Football / older sister, whatever. Mm-hmm. Everything else, I really like, actually.
Yeah. Older sister knows how to sell watermelons, that kind of thing.
Oh, you didn't need to do that. You didn't have to do that.
I'm sorry.
Older sister was selling watermelons. So that is.
When I think of you and sisters, that's immediately what I think of.
I cannot dispute that. It's unfortunate that there's no other story over the last 20 years or so that can replace that, but it is what it is.
I just like that right as Peter Burns is joining in, getting ready to come on with us, he hears us talking about sisters and watermelons and is probably thoroughly confused, but he's thinking, it's these 2 idiots. So it makes sense.
Peter's and I followed each other on social media for a long time.
Oh, so he's not surprised.
He's seen me get in it, and he's seen me get in stuff.
Yeah.
He's seen me and Lucci get after it.
Oh, okay. All right.
You know what I
mean? Yeah. Okay. Fair enough.
Joining us right now, he is kind of like, I called him the GOAT of the SEC network. He really is like the first guy that I think of when I think of the SEC network, which Peter's kind of a big deal because I don't know if you've heard about this. the Longhorns are coming to the SEC. Suddenly, our interest in the SEC network's at an all-time high.
I was going to say I'm fired up for it because the amount of, people that, I lived in Texas for 20 years, Geoff, like, that I lived in San Antonio and Corpus Christi and Houston, Dallas and Abilene. And so like, my days growing up around Texas were watching, Ricky Williams break the record at the time against A&M on Thanksgiving and watching Colt McCoy, following them play Greg McElroy, and had Colt not got injured, what would have happened there in the Rose Bowl that year. So it's hilarious to have so many of my old buddies that I went to college with hit me up and be like, oh, well, now I'll actually watch you on television now that the Longhorns are coming to the SEC. Like, I'm like, thanks, a-holes. Like, you weren't going to do that for the last decade. But now, like, because the Longhorns are rolling in, like, all right, that's fine. I guess better late than never. So.
Well, and Peter, how excited are you then? Obviously, the perspective you have then on the game coming back. You've been at the SEC network now and gotten to experience all that it has in terms of cocktail parties and egg bowls and iron bowls and all that. Yeah. And now to add the house divided game back in, how excited are you about that part?
Yeah, I mean, like what makes the Egg Bowl great and what makes the Iron Bowl great, and I would even say like LSU and Alabama is I live in a house divided. I'm a diehard LSU fan. My wife's a diehard, Alabama fan. Is that like you want to have these games or where like families don't talk to each other for like weeks at a time. Like people will still start talking shit about a game that happened like 20 years ago. I don't know if I can curse on this thing, but I'm going to do it.
Well done.
Beautiful.
Yes, absolutely.
And I felt like that was A&M in Texas. Like you pick a side, you can't pick both sides. And that's what makes a rivalry great. And, going back in the days of, 80s and 90s and just seeing even before that, like just the amount of history and the vitriol, and listen, A&M, kind of stuck their nose up at Texas for the longest time going, hey, listen, we're in the big boy conference, right? We're playing SEC football. And yet they still haven't been able to kind of punch through. And I think that's going to be the interesting story about how A&M, with all these great recruiting classes and all the money and all of this stuff, they haven't really been able to take advantage of it. And can Texas come in here red hot with, Quinn's last year, maybe, and Arch taking over the following year? Can they all of a sudden take the mantle over A&M? And so it didn't matter if you had a 10-year head start in the SEC. We're right here, taking it to you from day one.
Peter, I'm curious, kind of in line with what you were just talking about, if there was a conference meeting of fan bases taking place and Texas A&M were asked to leave the meeting, what would the other fan bases say about the two? And I don't know, expectations for this season and what's about to happen with everybody being in the same conference. I'm just fascinated by the profile that both of the football programs have as they get back together and are suddenly competing for the same things at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're interesting because they're kind of parallel to each other to a certain extent, Geoff, because inside the SEC and even outside the SEC right now, people have said like, man, y'all got sold a bill of goods with Jimbo Fisher. Like all of a sudden, like it's become almost kind of a laughingstock situation about how good they reported to be and how they weren't, right? Like how, your numbers are no better than Kevin Sumlin when he was over there at College Station. And meanwhile, the team that probably was picked on the most is the infamous Texas is back call from Joe Tess. Like, now Texas has been a part of that for a while. They are going, oh yeah, is Texas really back? Not necessarily yet, until we see it a little bit more with our own eyes. So I think both of them feel like they're great brands in college football, but have been drastically underperforming really over the last decade. And I don't think it's going to get easier. I don't think this is, for Texas and Oklahoma, I don't think this is like Nebraska going to the Big Ten where they got a boatload of money, but they'll never compete, right? Like we haven't seen that happen with Nebraska. Maybe Matt Rule gets them there. I'd like to see it because it's a great program. Or, a Rutgers taking that money, but it's going to get tougher. I mean, I think, Geoff, you can agree, and Chad the same way. I think the SEC top to bottom, or at least the top half of the league, has probably lent itself to being more a tougher football conference than maybe the Big 12 over the last decade or so.
Yeah, no doubt.
Well, the NFL draft certainly says so, Peter.
Right. Yeah. Talking with Peter Burns at Peter Burns ESPN. If you want to give him a follow on Twitter, obviously of the SEC Network. So, Peter, let's go to this year's Texas team. Obviously, when A&M went to the SEC, they did not do it off of a tremendous year. They had to make a coaching change right as they're headed in. Feels like Texas really has a chance to put an interesting, data point on that resume as they head to the SEC. How good do you think the Longhorns can be this year?
Yeah, I think it's all about quarterback play with Quinn and what Sark and if Sark feels comfortable with his crew. By all accounts, and you guys know it, y'all cover it day to day more so than I do. But from kind of zooming out a little bit, I look at it and go, that game against Alabama could be a hello world moment for the Texas Longhorns. I don't know if there's a bigger game, not only for Texas, but I'd even put for Alabama and maybe the last 5-6 seasons of like, hey, kind of reputations are on the line here. I remember when Arkansas played Texas a couple years ago, and Arkansas whipped their ass. I mean, it was like one of those, hey, we're just going to bully you around, and this is what SEC football is about. Now, mind you, that was still trying to get the team in place that I think they have now in Austin, or a little bit closer to it. But that's where a lot of just casual SEC fans have circled and go, we don't even know who the hell we want in this game. We want Alabama to lose and we want Texas to lose, right? Like that's how what SEC fans are going to say. And I think that's going to be a very interesting litmus test. And I don't know who needs it more. Part of me thinks it's Sark just to kind of prove that they're close and that they can compete in this conference when they get here. But my God, if Saban loses that game on the cusp of last year to Texas, buddy, that all of a sudden, that's like when Ivan Drago starts bleeding in Rocky IV and Rocky's like, okay, he's human. Like, let's get after it, and things change.
The he's cut scene.
Yeah.
When we look at Alabama, I wanted to segue into that slightly. If Texas were to beat Alabama, I think the worst thing for Alabama is that it might be a sign of what's to come for the rest of the season, that maybe this is a foundation with some cracks in it. You don't know what's a quarterback. You're replacing your running back. You need the receivers to bounce back. The offensive line.
Yeah.
There's a lot going on at Alabama, and I'm curious, what's the thing you feel best about with Alabama? If they're going to hang their hat on something right now, when Texas comes calling on the second week of September, it's this.
Well, it's two things. It's two words, Nick Saban, first and foremost, and it's four words, run the damn ball. And that's just, I mean, you go back and look at how Bama used to play this joyless murder ball, and it was just so suffocating where they'd play great defense. They look like cyborgs. They just run the ball, and as soon as you thought you had a chance, they're like, well, I'm going to crush your soul with a 7-minute drive, and we're just going to run it over and over and over until you bleed or you want to quit. And I think Saban got away from that because he had to as the game evolved, and that's why he hired Lane Kiffin, and he knew he needed to kind of grow with the times. But I think over in the last couple of years, guys, that they have almost become too old school Big 12. Remember they always used to say Big 12 football is kind of patty cake football, and they play this spread offense and blah blah blah. Well, that was Alabama the last couple of years. It worked, but now I think you're starting to see it. I mean, I saw it firsthand. When they were in Baton Rouge, they had a chance to get back into that game against LSU. And 3 times, Geoff, they tried to run the ball against LSU, and they couldn't. 3 drives in a row. I've never seen that ever in my life. Because normally I'm sitting there in the stands going, well, this is when they just push you into the locker and you become their what. And they couldn't do it. And that was crazy to see Alabama. And I think that pissed Saban off. And I think that's why they're going to go straight into, hey, we don't necessarily need the greatest quarterback because they're going to run the ball forever.
If Alabama can't play murder ball and they're occasionally maim ball, what are we talking about for Alabama if they're only half the version of the 2009 team, which Texas fans are keenly aware of, right? We know what it looks like when Mark Ingram is just plowing through and you can't stop that guy. If they're not that and they aren't able to grab that identity, is there a risk that this is the wrong year in the SEC West to not be the full version of yourself, with everybody so high on LSU and A&M being so talented and Lane Kiffin doing his thing?
Yeah, I mean, listen, the floor for Bama, I don't ever see it being lower than 10-2. I just don't think that with the amount of talent that they have with Nick Saban. I mean, the brilliance of what Saban has brought is that even with new coordinators, you're not bringing in a new playbook. These coordinators come in and they learn the Alabama playbook. right? Like Nick, I remember there was, I might want to say is Bill O'Brien. Bill O'Brien showed up in Tuscaloosa and he's like, all right, here's the playbook. Here's what we're going to go through. And the famous story is like, buddy, you don't tell Alabama what playbook you're going to run. Alabama tells you what playbook you need to learn. And that's why it's worked so well, because he's developed this kind of process that everybody kind of learns from it. So, I never see an 8-4 or 9-3 season for him. But at Alabama, it's pass or fail. Do you win a championship or you lose? And I mean, that's what it's like with Georgia right now. And they've won the last 2.
By the way, Peter, in years from now, when they do like the 8-part Nick Saban documentary on SEC Network, please make sure they call it Joyless Murder Ball and you get some money off of that. I mean, that would be the perfect title.
I'm in. And I mean, I'll vividly remember it was, a couple years. So I think it was with Ogeron. I want to say it might have been 2018, where LSU, remember it was Ed Ogeron, we're coming. Like, we're going to be great and we're going to give Alabama, we're going after them. I remember being on that sideline and it's 100,000 people. You can smell the bourbon. You can just smell the tailgating. Colin Baton Rouge is playing. LSU is just going crazy, right? I mean, Shaq is right there. You got all these stars, right? And then I look across the sideline and I see Saban in Alabama and I'm like, oh, they don't give a shit about LSU at all. Like, this is about to be a rout. And sure enough, Alabama did it. And I mean, that's what they are. And so, to me, I just look at this and I go, it's a big year for Alabama and actually an exciting year, because, my wife has been an Alabama fan since, she was a little kid. And I go, it must be boring to be a Bama fan because they're always normally so damn good and they're always up by like 40. Like, and for LSU, it's a shit show every single year, right? Like, we don't know if it's a roller coaster, good or bad, but you're like, lock in, buddy. It's going to be crazy. But I think this is the first year in a long time that people are like, I have no idea what to expect out of Alabama. And I think that's kind of cool for their fans, even if they don't know it, and the sport of college football.
We're talking with Peter.
Go ahead, Chad.
Well, we're talking with Peter Burns here. Peter, I want to give you, somebody threw in a good super chat for us. $4.99. Thank you. The Google Scholar. Peter, is this Saban's most vulnerable team since he's been in? He
just said 10-2 vulnerable.
Yeah, yeah. But it's true. I mean, like, like I said, if you're saying vulnerable, it's a pass or fail. Like, they don't want to go 8-4, but it is vulnerable for no other reason that, you don't know who your quarterbacks are. You're breaking into new coordinators, and they got a lot of young talent and a great recruiting class. So, vulnerable is it's not as vulnerable as Brent Venables in year 2 at Oklahoma, right? Like, that's vulnerable, right? Or Billy Napier in year 2 at Florida. Like, those are vulnerable spots that the future of the program depend on how these seasons go. Like, Saban's still going to go down as the greatest of all time, unless Kirby Smart continues to rattle off national championships back to back. So his legacy is safe, and so is Alabama football. So it just depends on whether or not it's going to be a new chapter.
Peter, in terms of back to our house divided discussions here. Obviously, Jimbo Fisher is going to hope to welcome Texas to Kyle Field next year. But before that, he's got to figure out this offense. He's got to add a little something to it. He's going with Bobby Petrino and the motorcycle. What do you think of the Aggies in 2023?
I think they're criminally underrated. And the only reason why I say that is because they had become kind of this laughing stock over the last couple of years. Like, oh, here comes, A&M. I mean, guys, 2 years in a row, they started the season ranked 6th in the first poll. In both seasons, they were unranked. Hell, they didn't even go to a bowl game last year, being 5-7. So I think they're underrated because I think a lot of people believe that this is, it's just Jimbo. We've written them off. We don't even care about them anymore. There's no more hype. They're going to win 7-8 games. I think they do have, some talent there. Connor Wegman played well. Remember, Max Johnson was their starting quarterback. He was playing pretty well until he broke his hand. So a lot of young talent. I got to think. I'll say this, Chad. Full disclosure, I thought the Petrino and Jimbo thing was going to work out. If for no other reason, they're grown ass men. They've figured it out, right? They nobody's going to be surprised when they walk in day one. And yet there I go to SEC Media Days, and the first thing out of Jimbo's mouth is like, well, Bobby's kind of calling the offense. I'll kind of call the offense. I was like, what are we doing here? Like lie to me, Jimbo. Tell me that, even if it's not true, tell me that, we struggled the last couple of years, and now it's going to be Bobby Petrino is going to be running the offense, and it's going to be fine. And Bobby Petrino's our offensive coordinator, in his whole Jimbo spiel. but he didn't do that. So that kind of muddied the water, but I still think they're going to end up being better than people think.
It's going to be interesting to see. That is Peter Burns at Peter Burns ESPN. SEC Network will be fired up once again. And Longhorn fans, tune in, check it out. You get a little test drive this year with the SEC Network. Peter, just let them know. Give them a little taste of what they can enjoy if they do tune in, to you on SEC Network.
Yeah, it's fun, man. We, the thing is, when they started hiring, we just had our 9-year anniversary yesterday. We're just a bunch of people that like to bullshit and talk about football. And we don't take ourselves too seriously. We poke fun of each other and stuff like that. There's a lot of good rivalries there. So, again, I think it's a little bit different than kind of cookie cutter coverage on it. But, I'm excited. I mean, there's more juice now knowing that the Longhorns are coming into this conference than there has been even maybe from the day one that we launched. So, in Oklahoma as well. But, man, it's it needed that, like everybody, like after a while, they're like, hey, let's just, dress up something kinky to kind of throw a little spice into the life. Like that's what it's going to be like having Texas Oklahoma here into this conference. And I'm ready for it. We'll put it that way.
Shame on you bastards, by the way, that haven't watched the SEC Network because Texas wasn't in the league yet. That is rough. That is rough.
Well, I don't blame them. I wouldn't have watched the Pac-12 network or the Big Ten network because I don't care about those teams. So I'll give them the free pass, but start checking us out, or at least following us on Twitter and social media and stuff like that to get a vibe. And that way you guys hit the ground running when you come in.
There it
is. Peter, we're going to call you during the football season occasionally just to check in, if possible, knowing that when you come on with us, you get to say shit and bullshit a few times and nobody blinks an eye.
As long as next time we can talk about like sisters and watermelons as well too. We'll go full circle on this puppy.
We gotta have Ketch tell you that story because you really appreciate that story.
I'm ADD as it is. I got to go host college football live in the SEC Network, so I don't want that story in my brain before I actually have to go do something.
Not now. We'll do that later.
Later, boys.
Thank you, dude.
Later, Peter.
Oh, Peter
Chad,
Burns.
I enjoyed that. He loved to say shit and bullshit. It was awesome.
It was great. That is the freedom of this thing that I love so much. Even though I'm not completely comfortable yet, people can hear me. I've still got radio and dump that in my head, but it is fun. It is fun to have the freedom of conversation. And I love listening to Peter talk about it. It's got me excited for the football season. Yeah. SEC Network, just find it. Look, on my setup, on my DVR Catch, it's literally one channel away from LHN. My LHN is 383. My SEC Network 384. It's right there. You'll just start practicing this year, those great triple headers and things that they have on the weekends. But it is going to be fun to see just how that community welcomes the Longhorns in. Here's the best way I can explain it, Ketch. You know how there's College Game Day? Everybody's familiar with it, right? On ESPN, you got everybody's coming to town. There's Reese Davis. Hey, look, Kirk Herbstreit. Oh, man, Pat McAfee. He's got belt buckles. There's also something called SEC Nation. It's a whole separate show that SEC Network sends out to a different location every week. So even if game day is not at your place, SEC Nation might be. Tim Tebow, Laura Rutledge in the past has been a part of it. Just trying to think of it. They're different. Paul Feinbaum. Oh my God. Feinbaum may be coming to your town even more than he has been. That's what the SEC is going to bring you. Just a whole nother set of things you didn't even know existed.
I love that Peter dropped an S-bomb before he was completely sure it was okay to drop an S-bomb.
That was excellent. It's like, yeah, it may not be worth shit. I don't know if I can say shit on here. Can I say it? Yeah. Okay, good. Let's do it. He looked at your face and he thought, Ketch will let me say this. We'll be good.
They wouldn't bring me on with Ketch and Chad if I couldn't at least say that.
Come on.
And you can tell it felt because that's a guy that wants to say S on SEC Network all the time.
If I'm not mistaken, I think Matt Berry snuck in a swear word when he talked to us too. You could tell those guys need to do that every once in a while. Otherwise, they'll just explode and get ulcers.
It's got to have broadcasting slump busters, if you will.
Yes.
Look, guys, Alex Dunlap joins us in 40 minutes at 2:20. We'll definitely pick Alex's brain on UT football 18. Are we Tyrone Swoops days away?
18. Oh, that's it. I should have 18 Wheeler package. You're right. 18 days away from that. 23 from the NFL. 26 from the first NFL Sunday. Yes, 18 days from now, Texas and Rice will get it on.
Let's do this when we come back. We got the crap bag in 20. We'll go through the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah.
On guys that need to step up for the Longhorns. We talked about the offensive position in depth, running back, receiver, whether there were any tight ends or offensive linemen that belonged in this need to step up now in what is probably the most important week of camp. By the way, tonight, big VIP practice, Chad. If you donate enough money to Texas One, I think you get free parking and you get to come in and watch.
Ooh, damn right.
Like way more than the media.
Money has its privileges.
Hey, always. So when we come back, we will jump into that. Really do appreciate Peter Burns. He's about to, I think he's hopping on a plane. He may have some travel planned tomorrow. He squeezed us in when he could, and we enjoyed that. Always love. We'll continue to try to bring you the best guests that we can. I'm trying to figure out when I want to line up the Bomani Jones. Like, when do I want Bomani to come on, and when do I want to ask for that moment? I almost sent the text today, but then I realized I've got two different Bomani Jones phone numbers in my phone. So do I send the message to both of them?
That's a great question. And if Bomani Jones has not gotten too big that he'll actually do this show, I'm going to be so pumped because I've watched is it HBO, right? Where he's got the show, HBO or Showtime,
Yes.
Where he's got the gig. I think it's HBO. That show is great. Bomani's such a beast. And we were able to get him on as a guest way, way, way back in the day when he was just getting it cranked up. So if he'd come on, that would be awesome.
I'm going to be disappointed if he doesn't. I think knowing Bomani just a little bit, I think we'll be able to get Bomani Jones on. Plus, it's to talk his favorite thing. He loves his Longhorns,
yes,
even if it's a complicated relationship.
Yeah, you're like his dealer. That's who you are. You're Bomani's dealer.
At twice a year, it's always like twice. Bomani, I think, feels like he's not going to be the guy that uses the bat phone too often. But twice a year, Bomani will send me a text that is very UT specific. Hey, Ewer's going to play tomorrow, right? That kind of a thing. Just
right.
Completely random. He'll want to know something about his beloved Longhorns. So yeah, I just don't want to use our shot up, right? I don't want to be like, hey, can you do it this week? And he's like, yeah, I got 5 minutes. While I want to be able to get it where we can get him for a little bit of time, because you got to let Bomani eat.
Absolutely.
You know, you can't just ask him 2 questions and put him on a clock. You got to let Bomani breathe.
Yes. And coming up, I got a Bomani Jones question for you before we get to the defensive stuff.
I think the answer is I have to text both numbers. And I wonder if one of them is like his old number and he got too big for that number and like people he didn't want to text him anymore.
Yeah.
They go that number, but then I have the other number because of occasionally he does have a Texas football question that he wants answered.
The real insider number.
I just don't know which one is which.
You have both. All right, I'll hit you with that and then we'll talk defense coming up.
All right. This Orangebloods recruiting flashback focuses on the player generally considered to be the greatest Longhorn football player of all time. Vince Young was a 5-star prospect by rivals when he signed with the Longhorns in 2002, finishing as the #1 overall player in the nation. 20 plus years later, the 2 things that stand out the most about Young's recruitment was how much ground the Longhorns made up in a blink of an eye. Weeks before his senior season began in 2001, his mother reported that Texas was out. Quote, "We ruled out Texas as Vincent has decided that he probably won't stay in the state of Texas to play in college," Miss Young said. In just a matter of months following that statement by his mom, Vince Young was pretty much wrapped up to go to Texas. The other thing that stands out about Young's recruitment was just how big he was in the city of Houston. I went to a playoff game with Madison against Hightower in the Astrodome, and opposing fans were jumping up in the stands over the excitement that Young was creating. I wrote for Orangebloods.com at the time. Quote, at that point, the Astrodome crowd started to go crazy. People in the high towers section were high-fiving each other, laughing, and screaming in amazement, end quote. It was unlike anything I've ever seen before or since. On the day he committed to the Longhorns in January, Vince said, quote, there's a lot of love down there at Texas, and that's what I was looking for before I visited. They made my mom smile, and that's all I needed to see. I committed to them this afternoon. Young was the bell cow of a 2002 recruiting class that was ranked first in the nation and is regarded as one of the best in the history of the school. That class signed 6 5-star prospects, which also included Justin Blaylock and Roderick Wright. Ultimately, Young's class was the foundation of the 2005 national championship team.
That line about Vince and his mom always gets me. I always love that stuff. Big old tough football players saying, well, it made my mom smile. That's all I care about. I love it.
It's crazy to think that Vince Young, at this time going into it was about this time in 2001 that I did that interview. And for his mom to say the Longhorns have been eliminated, and then for the Longhorns to be the runaway favorite just a few months later, really speaks to the work that Tim Brewster put in. He really was a one-man wrecking shop as a recruiter back in the day for the Longhorns, and that was all him. I mean, he put that bad boy on a platter, and it doesn't happen without him.
All right, so quick question before we get to defense here. If indeed there's some kind of a watch party that people can get involved in where they'll be viewing a Texas football game, if you get insider texts, comments, questions, will you be divulging those live during the show and during the game, or are you going to have to hide those things? For example, if a Bomani Jones hits you during the game and says, really, are we dealing with this crap again or whatever? Like, are you going to say that during the deal?
It's possible. Everything's on the table, Chad. I think you know that I am a cheap whore. I don't need to be taken to like Saks Fifth Avenue to go shopping. You can take me to Target. Hook me up.
I can just see you looking at your phone. Not going to tell you, not going to reveal anything, but name rhymes with Shomani. I'm just saying, you should try to be slick, but it won't work. It's going to be fantastic.
Well, the thing is, that I have a hard time keeping a secret.
I know you do. You're the last guy. You're the guy I've got to see a movie before. That's why I'm so glad I saw the J-Law movie, No Hard Feelings, before you did. Now
you gave me spoilers, see?
Now we can have a real conversation about it.
Now there's no surprise when I see full frontal nudity when I watch that. You were Mr. Spoiler Guy. Now you know how it feels.
You still won't be disappointed. I do apologize if it ruins it for you at all. All right. So we got Crap Bag coming up at 2. Why I'm excited about Hard Knocks episode 2 tonight, plus the latest info on Michael Orr from his side of things and what he did not know about the Tuies and Blindside and all that stuff coming up. So one of the other discussions we've been having today is about Texas football. We're 18 days away, and the discussion is guys that need to step up a little, guys that need to flash, right? Last week was get my attention for Sark and the coaches. But for the guys that didn't, they really need to have a couple moments this week. Earlier in the show, we were talking about the offensive side of the ball, and we wanted to get into defense now. So, Ketch, if we go, and I feel it's appropriate to go defensive front here because of Alfred Collins. We could agree that Alfred Collins has made enough flash plays and flash moments. He has now gotten into the consciousness of the coaches, correct?
Yes.
That's your feeling on it. He and Broughton?
I think so. I mean, those guys were both running with the first team in the scrimmage on Saturday. I don't know. I think one of the real interesting things about the defensive line for Texas is what will the snap allotment look like for both of the players just mentioned, whether you're talking about Alfred Collins or Vernon Broughton, right? They're getting first team reps in scrimmages. You see a lot of rotation along the defensive line. We certainly saw that a year ago. I mean, it was constant Coburn, Ajomo, and then Murphy's in there and Sweat is in there. They're used to playing up front with 4 guys just constantly, taking about 40, 45% of the snaps for each guy. that 2 months ago would have felt like a lot for Broughton and Collins, although there would have been a part of me that looking at how this, and well, you know what? It's a good question to ask Alex Dunlap at 220, because he's the guy that keeps chart of how many snaps each guy takes. And I think maybe the real question, I don't know the answer fully, so I'm interested to hear what the snap percentages were for the D tackles a year ago, because that, I mean, it might very well be that we see those two guys fill in the snap loads of guys that played 40% of the snaps last year. That's a lot. We're talking at that point, 375 snaps maybe over the course of 12 games. It's a lot of football. That's more football than those two guys would have played a year ago for certain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's fair. So along the defensive front, what about names like, can I assume Byron Murphy has gotten enough and you've heard enough about Byron Murphy, you're feeling like he doesn't need a flash moment this week?
He doesn't need a flash moment this week. He was, analytics really would have liked Byron Murphy a year ago, but when it comes to sacks, when it comes to forcing turnovers, when it comes to big moments in big games, I'm personally still waiting to kind of see that next level for him. The thing that takes a guy from being an honorable mention, all Big 12 type of player to you're the best defensive tackle or the second best defensive tackle in the entire league. You know, I think there are steps I'm waiting to see from both him and Sweat. I don't know that their names have been buzzwords to such an extent that I think they're ready to do that. Mm-hmm. So there are levels to it. I don't think they need to step up. They don't need to show me or approve it or anything like that with regards to the depth chart going into the season. But just it's also the Baron Sorrell conversation, right?
That's where I was headed next. Yeah.
Is he about to take the step to being one of the best players in the conference at his position? That means he's performing at an NFL level and not a pretty good college level. So, yeah, I mean, I think those guys, for me, based on there hasn't been a lot of buzz in camp about them, you'd like to see a little bit more, but those guys can't prove anything in practice. Where those guys are going to prove the questions that they have to answer will be in Tuscaloosa the second week of September.
How about Ethan Burke? Paxton just brought him up on the chat, and I was about to.
Ethan Burke is the guy that I think is doing a Billy Walton. I think he's going to be the starter at edge. I think you're hoping you get kind of Baron Sorrell contributions from a year ago. You know, if at the end of the year, Ethan Burke has 6 sacks, 5.5 sacks, that will have been a really productive first year. And then you'd think, okay, well, that guy builds on that. And then there's a double-digit sack in their season based on how well he plays as a young player, whether or not Colin Simmons arrives or not, that he has a chance to be that kind of player. There's actually a different name at the Ethan Burke position that I think is he needs a Billy Walton moment, and maybe a bunch of them, is Justice Finkley. Because Finkley is the guy that's supposed to be challenging Burke, and I don't get the sense that that's really happening. And if we see Billy Walton start to take second team reps, then I think he's directly taking them away from a guy like Justice Finkley, a guy that so many people have high hopes for. A lot of people, when he was recruited, thought he was the best of the defensive linemen that Texas took in that 2021 recruiting class, or I guess 2022 recruiting class. Forgive me, that was last year. But it hasn't started to happen yet, and you're waiting for Jamon Tapp and Justice Finkley together. You know, you don't want Billy Walton, undersized true freshman, coming in and eating your damn cornbread.
Yeah, and remind me, Ketch, real quick on Finkley. You know I love the name, but wasn't he a guy that was either from Alabama or Saban was interested, or both?
Both.
Okay, that's what I thought. So that added some aura at the beginning, right?
And you look, the fact that he's out of state, I think puts even more pressure on him internally to do more this season, because the out-of-state guys are often the first to want to put their toes into the transfer portal. They're not close to home.
Right.
There's always I want to get closer to home. I
Which
want
makes
more
sense.
playing time. You don't usually see guys going into their third years from out of state being so patient that they're like, no, you know what? As a matter of fact, I'm okay losing my job to a freshman because I value the education at the University of Texas so much. And Lake Travis is beautiful when there's actually water in the lake. So I don't want to go anywhere else. And in reality, guys are like, I need to play. I want to play. I'm not playing. All of these guys, they all think they're going to play on the NFL at the NFL level. They all think they're playing on Sundays. Every guy on that roster thinks he's going to play on Sunday. And on some level, you need that type of confidence if you're ever going to be that good. But I think we can all stand back from 30,000 feet up and go, well, I can point out 60 guys for sure that aren't playing on Sundays, but none of those guys ever believe that's them, which is why when you're talking about, I think, out-of-state guys in year 2 in the system, if at the end of year 2, and so, you know, for a guy like Justice Finkley, we're talking about 4 or 5 months from now. When we get to December, how does he feel about this last season? How does he feel about where he is on the depth chart? Does he feel like he's lost his space to a certain extent? I don't think that's happened yet. But look, Billy Walton now taking second team reps at that edge position means somebody's cornbread is getting eaten, and it's getting eaten by Billy Walton. And it's important to fend off the cornbread eaters.
Mm-hmm.
And they got to do that. Like, even more so than some of the other guys that we've mentioned. I don't know that Jaden Blue, if he doesn't get it done soon, I don't think he's necessarily worried about somebody on campus right now nipping on his heels. And when we brought up the young receivers, Niblett and DeAndre Moore, those are the guys trying to nip on the heels. This is a rare case where the pressure in needing to make a move also includes there is somebody nipping on my heels to take my cornbread and my snaps, and you got to be good enough to fend that off. And if you're not, you know, I think everybody knows what that means without you having to say it, but there are just really strong implications in the world of 2023 college football about what it means when you're not on the depth chart.
All right, Ketch, we're coming up on the top of the hour here. 58 after on House Divided. You want to hit a break before the crab bag, or you want to talk about the back end of this defense?
Let's take a quick break. I'm going to go get a glass of water. Like, my mouth is dry. So You offered it up. I will take it. And when we come back, we'll do crab bag, and Alex Dunlap will join us in 20 minutes. And I want to ask him that defensive lineman question about snaps, because maybe we'll answer all the questions that we have about that position once he kind of lays out what it looked like a year ago.
Yeah, that's fair. It's House Divided on Orangebloods Live.
This Orangebloods recruiting flashback focuses on one of the biggest UT football stars of the last decade. Bijan Robinson was a 5-star prospect by Rivals when he signed with the Longhorns, finishing as the nation's number 18 overall prospect, the second best prospect in the state of Arizona, and the number 1 running back in the country, according to Rivals.com. Upon retrospect, it's kind of amazing that former running backs coach Stan Drayton was able to land Robinson when you consider that Ohio State was perceived as a massive leader for much of his recruitment. In fact, on the day he committed, Rivals.com recruiting analyst Adam Gorney told Orangebloods, quote, even after the Atlanta 5-star challenge, it almost felt like Ohio State was the foregone winner, Gorney said that day. But as it got closer, I think the realization that he would basically be going across the country to play football kind of set in. He really, really liked Texas and USC a lot, had connections to both schools, liked the staffs, and how they would use him, and wound up finding a school closer to home that he was very happy with. It wasn't until Robinson visited Texas on an unofficial visit for the spring game in April that Texas began to make it surge. By the time June rolled around, a couple of months later, the Longhorns had emerged as a team to beat in his recruitment. Robinson was a part of a 2020 recruiting class that finished 14th in the nation that year in the Rivals.com rankings, and what turned out to be the final full recruiting class for Tom Herman. A few years later, and there's not a ton of meat on the bone with respects to the elite prospects from that year outside of Robinson. Jake Majors and Jaron Thompson remain as a few of the higher ranked players in that class, but it's actually two of the lower ranked prospects in the class, Jahdae Barron and Jalen Ford, that have made the biggest impact as the class begins to wrap up its contribution to the Texas football program.
Crossing over that 2 o'clock hour Central Time, House Divided with Ketch and Chad. Hope you are having a good one. Over 300 folks checking it out right now. We appreciate it. Check it out. Like the page, subscribe, get your notifications. And remember, 8 a.m. every weekday morning, it is Anwar and the Old Fashioned Show. 3 o'clock every afternoon. Right after we're done is Rod Babers and the Rodcast. And we are here for you. House Divided, noon. Each and every day, talking all kinds of Longhorn football talk, a little bit of Aggies, Cowboys, and whatever else pops into our head.
Debut show tomorrow night, as a matter of fact.
Debut show? Oh, debut show? Like a show that hasn't existed is going to exist as of tomorrow?
Yeah, it's Wednesday, right? I don't have my days backwards.
Is that what you're telling me? Are you referring to, hey, yo, the Outsider Show? Is that what you're
talking about? Yes, the Outsider Show.
Hey, let me tell you what. There's only one thing crazier than a bunch of guys getting together and saying, hey, we want to do a show called Outsiders because we just want to say what we want and have a good time and give our opinions. The only thing crazier than that is saying, you know what we should do if it's called OB Outsiders? Let's have an Aggie host it. Like, that's weird. That is weird. But that's what they did. They reached out to me. The Outsiders reached out to me. I don't know if that makes me the Hulk Hogan and I'm about to do the heel turn and give the NWO promo, but whatever. Tomorrow night at 9, we're going to debut OB Outsiders, me trying to wrangle Chance Mock, Bo Edge, radio legend Jason Dick, the voice of the fans, Chris Abbott, and I think that's going to be the general cast. And then there's others involved. That's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's a good way of describing it.
Just there's going to be a lot of stuff going on, and I can't guarantee that all of it will be wholesome. I'm just saying it right now.
Hey, Paxton, do us a favor. Don't do this in the chat.
Nice. 49-0?
Yeah, but we don't need our viewers running off to watch 49-0.
No. They don't need that. They do, though. Longhorn fans do want to see that kind of Ewers-Sanders relationship. I really felt that was a big moment for those two guys. They look so good together. Chalking up. Maybe
tomorrow we'll just simulcast the game.
No.
Just us reacting to the game while it's on the Longhorn Network.
Oh my God. I'm looking forward to that happening if that's actually happening. Do we have a confirmation on House Divided watch parties yet?
No, we're just sitting on that. We're sitting on that.
I would love to do it. You know me.
Sitting on that. There's all kinds of in-season discussions taking place. In 18 days, Chad, people will find out that our game days are going to be a lot of fun.
18 days. It should be a lot of fun. Yeah, 18 days from Texas and Rice. All right, you want to get a little crab bag info here?
Crab bag it up.
Okay, so I am excited for episode 2 of Hard Knocks for tonight. I'm not getting paid by HBO or anything like that, but I was able to watch episode 1, Ketch. I dragged myself through it, even though it was edited. That's the only part of it I didn't like. If you don't know, if you don't catch the first showing of Hard Knocks, the idiots at HBO edit it for some reason. I don't know why. They edit it. If you watch it replayed later, they put beeps in it.
Wait, what?
Yes. It's crazy. It's crazy.
I do not believe that can possibly be a thing. They edit it?
I wish I was lying to you, but I happened to catch an older version. I walked in and it was just on. Main HBO. This wasn't like HBO for kids. Main HBO, middle of the afternoon. And I was like, oh, cool. I'll record it. And I go back and it was like, dee-loo. I'm like, whoa, what the heck was that? When Salah's giving his big speech at the beginning and this and that and this and then and he's blah, 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 shit and fuck. And then all of a sudden it was beep. Like, whoa, what are we doing? So watch the original.
Us?
What's that?
They punish us.
Yeah. So I'm telling everybody, make sure you watch tonight. If you're like me and Ketch and a lot of you, and you love real earthy language, watch tonight at 9:00. But Ketch, here's what I like. Part 1, we got a couple moments I was looking for. I wanted to see moments where Aaron Rodgers and Garrett Wilson interacted. Garrett, obviously a legend out of the Austin area, and has gone on to be the offensive rookie of the year. There's a moment where Garrett Wilson is losing his mind because of how good a pass was from Aaron Rodgers. He's screaming and hollering. Oh, man. He's like, I ain't never seen any shit like that. Oh, my God. He's flipping out. It was awesome. Then there's moments where offensive linemen are commenting on how good these throws are from Rodgers. But the moment of the episode for me was the defensive coordinator, Ketch, is going through film on a day when the offense ended up winning whatever it was, like a scrimmage. He goes through it and he says, fellas, this. He goes, but hey, we're going to be in every game. We're going to play tough, blah, blah, blah. And he says, plus, look at this throw. And he goes, this was all the way across the hash on his back foot, back shoulder. And he just looks at his defense and he goes, guys, I don't know if there's another human that can make that throw. And he's ours. That's our quarterback. And the room starts to buzz. Ketch, Sauce Gardner, and all these guys, Quinlan Woods, they just start to get excited about Aaron Rodgers. So I loved that. And they just, the reaction around Rodgers is what I was looking for. I got some of that in part 1. There was a Sean Payton reference in episode 1. I kind of like that. They went ahead and fed into the whole Nathaniel Hackett deal. Liev Schreiber, the famous star of Ray Donovan, but the voice of Hard Knocks, if you don't know, the narrator, for the very first time, he shows up at a Hard Knocks practice. And it's Aaron Rodgers, and you get to see that. So I'm in for episode 2. I think it's going to be cool. I'm liking what I'm seeing so far. And, of course, they just got Dalvin Cook. So we're probably going to hear about that as things go on. And so far, guys are digging Aaron Rodgers. Aaron's being cool. And maybe you could say it's because he's mic'd up, but I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying we know him as he's supposed to be a cold, heartless kind of teammate, and not even his family loves him and all that stuff. I'm actually kind of liking Aaron Rodgers so far, Ketch. I got to admit it.
We'll see if he can win me over. I used to be a big Aaron Rodgers guy, and he's lost me. I think he's turned into jackass guy.
Okay. Yeah, we'll see. You let me know. Try to check it out tonight, and definitely get that unedited version recorded at 9 tonight. But Hard Knocks hits on Tuesdays, of course, as we get closer to the NFL. So here's the Michael Orr update as far as I'm concerned. Again, I'm wearing the Ole Miss shirt from Michael today. And
you should have worn a shirt with a $sign on it.
I really should have. I went with the one with the Land Shark logo on it there as it goes. Yes. Yeah, it is dollars. He needs the dollars right now. So Ketch mentioned this story yesterday. I hadn't even heard it, that Michael Orr, now there's some just questions coming up about Michael Orr, the Tuohy's, the Blind Side movie, and did he not get paid for the movie or whatever? Here's what I found out today, Ketch, in reading through it. Michael Orr's people are saying they didn't discover that he wasn't actually adopted by the Tuohy's until February of this year.
How do you even discover that?
Well, because the story was Michael always had a feeling that something felt fishy around the movie part. Like, wait a minute, shouldn't I have gotten money? Wait, somebody told me that the Tuohy's are making money off of it. Shouldn't I be getting this? And he was asking questions, but he was never getting the right answers. So finally he put a lawyer on the case or somebody like that. Well, this lawyer finds a conservatorship paperwork. So everybody think of that, Britney Spears story, right? Where you get a conservatorship for somebody if you feel like they can't handle their business. So Ketch, when he's 18 years old in 2004, they have him sign this paper. He thinks, this is his story. His version is he thinks he's signing a piece of paper that will say the Tuohy's are adopting you. He thinks it's adoption papers, but they convince him that conservatorship and adoption basically mean the same thing.
Oh, no. So maybe he really is as stupid as they made him out to be in the movie.
Well, that I don't know. And apparently that's what's always bugged him about the movie, that he was actually a pretty good student and that he had
that
already
whole adoption conservatorship thing.
Then he had gone into this sort of deal. So again, he's 18 though, Ketch.
I know.
He's 3 months into being 18 years old. And so he signs this deal, and the conservatorship says they can make financial choices for him, including theoretically stuff about a movie. The Tuies have always said they never made anything off the movie. They only made a little off the book that the movie was made from. So I guess they can double check all of that information. But then when he's 21, get this one. When he's 21, Ketch, that's when somebody found a document that he signed that signs away his whole story to 20th Century Fox for nothing. Now, let's all logically go through this. Why in the world would a 21-year-old Michael Oher ever sign that if he knew that's what it was? Like, what kind of idiot would he have to be? And he is saying today, I don't remember signing that document, but if I did, I certainly didn't know that that's what the document said. So there's a part of it that is, dude, you got to know that. You got to cover your ass here. But then the other side just feels more and more wicked when it comes to the Tuies. And I know there's some stuff coming out today. We had somebody chat in earlier about some updated stuff. Apparently there's a part of the story maybe where Michael Oher, here it is. You're right. Thank you, Brandon, for this earlier. Oher may not be the innocent victim. They're claiming Oher knew they couldn't adopt him, and he was asking for money to not go public in 2020. Supposedly they got the text messages to prove it. Okay, so if the adoption part almost doesn't matter to me as much, Ketch. Like, I think it was important for him personally. If he honestly believed they had adopted him and then he didn't, or they didn't, that sucks. But if they went out of their way to make sure they could make money off of that movie and he couldn't, like, that's just true sinister activity. So I don't know what's going to happen here. I don't know who's going to be able to prove what, but that's the story from Michael Oher. Full disclosure, yes, he does have a book coming out, but kind of like you said yesterday, Ketch, maybe he should finally be making some money off of all this, but he's going to try to tell that, that full story of what happened. But now it's like this supposed wholesomeness, the wholesome story of that movie, no matter what you thought of the movie, like there was kind of a cool story in there. And now it may not be there. It may not be completely real. Like, this just goes beyond Oher's upset at how they portrayed him in a movie. If he literally gets nothing off of the movie that made over $300 million, that's just silly.
All right. Some stream of conscious thoughts here.
Yeah.
I think first and foremost, I'm not blaming the victim here. I mean, at the end of the day, this isn't me saying Michael Oher shouldn't have wore pants that day. Like, I'm not blaming Michael Oher. I do have a question of how did all of this get beyond his first NFL agent?
Yeah, that's a fair question. While he wasn't focused, he says at the beginning of his career, shouldn't somebody have been?
I mean, think of Johnny Manziel's agent that we just got finished watching on Netflix.
Good point. Yeah.
Can you imagine that guy letting the conservatorship getting beyond him? Like, whoa, wait a minute.
Right.
You signed a piece of paper that says that every dollar that you make on the movie about, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, how would that not have occurred in 2004? Again, 2004, he signs that document. He gets to Oxford, right? He starts going through, even if he gets past that.
His first NFL agent should have been like, hold up.
Yeah, because that affects him or her at that moment. You're affecting their ability to make money.
So
right?
Some of this is, I'm curious to see where this unfolds, because I do have some just questions about the narrative of how all of this was supposed to unfold.
Yeah.
He's 37 now.
Right. Yeah. And has been retired since 2016. The story is in 2016, he began to really look into this, get serious about it, and try to have people dig it up. And then not until February of 2023 does someone dig up this conservatorship document. That's amazing to me that it took that long.
Did you ever watch, the HBO show with Turtle and
Entourage?
in Entourage, Ari does all kinds of crazy stuff for his clients.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, you need this, you need that, anything you need, I got it taken care of. I think in the movie Tropic Thunder, where Matthew McConaughey is the agent, and like, what do you mean? I got in your contract that you get TiVo. What do you mean you don't have TiVo?
Right, I get you
TiVo.
We get you TiVo.
How on earth did you go your entire NFL career without your agent?
Right.
Fixing that.
Of all people, think about it. Of all the people to say to Michael Orr, teammates should have, and Harbaugh should have, and a lot of guys should have. But of all the people to say to Michael Orr, man, I bet you made a lot off of that movie. Sandy Bullock and the Oscar.
Never came up, Chad.
Like, of all the people that should have asked that question, you're right. The agent should have at least said, hey, what did we do? Hey, what'd you do with that money? Do you want me to do something with that money? Let's talk about it. Nobody asked that question? That's weird.
Again,
yeah.
I have some questions. I will say that I think it was like a TMZ story.
Yes.
Because if somebody was going to interview somebody from the family, it would be TMZ. Although I can't confirm completely that it's TMZ. By the way, we're going to take a break here in a second, Chad. I'm going to have you log out and log back in because you're getting a little. I don't know what you're just. Yeah, when you do that, you're blurry. Alex Dunlap going to join us in a few minutes as well. Anything else in the crap bag?
No, that's pretty much it. It is Gary Kubiak's birthday, so happy birthday to Gary. First quarterback I ever saw play live for A&M was Gary Kubiak, who is coaching in Poland now. I didn't realize that.
Maybe we do this tomorrow because I would love to see the stories in the chat. But one of the things that's come up on Orangebloods in the last few days, it started off with what's the hottest football game you've ever been to?
Mm-hmm.
Then it was, what's the coldest game that you've ever been to? And then today I was like, well, you know what would be interesting? What's the drunkest you've ever been at a game?
That is good.
I told this story, very dear friend of mine who I sadly, we ended up not being friends towards the end of his life. He passed away. But at the 2000 Stanford game, it was a late game. And I don't remember. Remember, this is the Tiger Woods on the sideline game.
Yep.
I don't know why the game started late. Maybe it was because the game that was on before. So it was like already going to be like a 9:30 start. It was a late start. I had a friend of mine that we were at Aussie Sports Bar, and he started drinking at like 11 o'clock in the morning. So that by the time the Texas Stanford game started, head was like down on the table. But he kept doing this thing at random points in the game when nothing was happening. He would be like, yeah, that's some bullshit. Hey, screw you, ref. And he did it like the entire game, all the way up to like 1 o'clock in the morning. He just, every 20 minutes or so, he'd muster up enough energy to just curse at the screen no matter what was happening. And it got to the point where everybody at Aussies was cheering him on. We were all sitting around waiting. When's he gonna, is he asleep and passed out? Or is there another level left inside of him? We did that the entire game. I've never been drunk at a game. I've gotten drunk after games. Right. I've never got drunk in a game. But yeah, remembering that.
Oh, that is good stuff. All right.
So maybe tomorrow we go hottest, coldest, drunkest.
Oh, I like it. That's a good combo. Okay. So do you want me just to jump out and back in while you bring Alex in, or are we taking a break?
I think we're good enough. We'll bring Alex in. It's actually my fault. I should have just jumped out of that. We got to get Alex out of here in like the next 15 minutes. So let's just bring Alex from Orangebloods.com in. Alex, afternoon.
Good afternoon, fellas. I feel like I'm Bob Murray in Quick Change, man. I had to switch out of my tank top before anybody made fun of me again.
It's funny we didn't catch you. Like
What do you think my wardrobe is when it's 107 degrees outside, man?
that is completely fair. It kind of reminds me of Secret of My Success when Michael J. Fox keeps changing his clothes in the elevator. I don't know if you've ever seen that movie. It's a
Dude, totally.
It's one of my faves. I just, I never know, Alex. Like sometimes I assume you've seen nothing and you've seen it all. Hey, I wanted to ask a question, and I think Chad's gonna jump back in here. We were talking about the defensive line rotation, and it's this whole is Alfred Collins and Vernon Broughton, this stuff real? And I was talking with Chad about this, that the way they divvied up the snaps last year, it's pretty even, that the starters and the backups were both getting, I think, like 40-ish% of the snaps. I hate to ask you off the top of your head, so you don't have to have it right in front of you, but from a ballpark perspective, what were the snap rotations like last year? What would potentially be available for Vernon Broughton and Alfred Collins in a world where they're asked to kind of fulfill the role from last season?
Okay, so where do I have that? I have so many tabs. I'm looking at this. So the personnel utilization for the for defensive player participation. So all right. So as far as the highest snap percentage among all Texas interior defensive linemen, now this doesn't include edge guys like Ovi. It doesn't include Baron Sorrell, right? We're not talking edge. We're not talking strong side defensive end. So it's Tavondre Sweat. He played 408 snaps on defense. That's 46.95%. Keandre Coburn played 42.64%. Byron Murphy played 37.63%. Moro Ojomo played 36.36%. Alfred Collins played 25.55%. Vernon Broughton played 24.17%. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So in a 6-man rotation, you have the third group of 2, right, playing around 25%. The second group of 2 playing at about 36 to 37%, and the first group of 2 playing between 43 and 46%.
So, I mean, it makes a lot of sense that whether they're playing great or not, they're going to have to play those two guys mid 30% at a, like just based off what happened a year ago, their snap increases are going to go up whether they've actually made leaps and bounds or not.
Well, they're gonna have to, because Keandre Coburn and Moro Ojomo are gone, and so like I don't think Sydir Mitchell is going to step up into that kind of role. I don't think it's like Sydir Mitchell and Aaron Bryant and Trill Carter all of a sudden probably are going to be stepping into those. If it continues, they're going to be, 2 of those 3 will be stepping into 23 to 25% roles if that's the way that they keep it. But under this defensive coaching staff, that's the way that it's been. That's the way that they've handled rotations. Now, I do think that there's probably room on that 46 to 47% on the high end to go up, especially if they feel like the depth underneath isn't worthy of getting 25% of the snaps. It doesn't feel like it would be that taxing to get these guys up to 60% snap counts. I mean, hell, Trill Carter, if you watch back was he from Minnesota?
Yeah.
I keep saying Michigan State. I think it's just because I watched the game versus Michigan State. He was like a 70% snap participant there for those guys. So I mean,
really?
Well, over the 4 games that I charted, but I mean, out of 4 games yesterday, being a 70% snap participant, that's a whole lot. It was one of the reasons for my big concern with him. He didn't do a damn thing, and he played all the time. Yeah. So, but the point is, I mean, clearly there are college programs that feel like these guys can get up to that sort of level, right? It's not like everybody says, these dudes are 300-pound monsters. We can only have them for half the snaps or less. I think some of that probably had to do with depth. And I thought the strangest thing was that, in Anwar's report, his source that was there at practice said that Vernon Broughton was getting worked in with the ones. To me, that just seems like maybe there's a situational package or something, because that isn't anything I've heard or anything that I've seen or have been expecting one bit. But, certainly interesting if he's a guy that they're starting to really like. As Chad said the last time I was on here, I mean, Sark, after that last press conference, was that last week, Chad, whenever we were talking about that, he talked up Vernon Broughton specifically. He brought his name up unsolicited or is that the way to say it?
Yeah.
Like he brought
Right.
he brought it up
Colin
without
Van
somebody-
Broughton, right?
Yeah, like he brought it up himself. Like no one asked him, like, what about Vernon Broughton? Like he just kind of brought him up, right? So maybe there's been some movement there. Clearly, as we've talked about before, any movement from those depth guys is stuff that Texas fans will be glad to hear, because they haven't given us too much on the football field from an efficiency standpoint to get excited about, just looking at what we've seen in previous years.
So, Alex, what we're talking about today specifically is guys that need to flash between these two scrimmages, guys that maybe need to get a little attention as they're headed into this depth chart type of scrimmage. So we've gone through the offense and a lot of the defense. Let me go back into the defense with you here. A guy that you expected a little more from that maybe hasn't flashed, a guy that a source has told you, man, I need to see a little more from this guy. Are there a couple names in your head from, linebackers and back end that need to, get some attention this week?
I mean, I'll be honest, Chad, the guys who I kind of expected to be the dudes, those guys have kind of been the guys. I guess maybe to a certain degree, I would say that we haven't heard just completely glowing, just out of this world reviews about Byron Murphy, who I think is one of the best players on the whole defense. Clearly, we talked about snaps per production caused, and we talk about efficiency and stuff like that. And, whenever I do my charting on these guys, I don't just look at the tackles and the assisted tackles and the sacks and stuff like that. I'll also look at the quarterback hits and the pressures and the TFLs, the batted passes, the caused fumbles, the recovered fumbles, the stuffs for the DBs, the PBUs, the interceptions, the blow ups, the return touchdowns, safeties. I give them lockdown bonuses. I add into the equation their completion percentage allowed, their snaps per burn allowed, snaps per missed tackle, stuff like this. A lot of stuff goes into the way that I have great efficiency on the defense. And Byron Murphy's always been one of the most efficient players. I mean, he's an awesome player. It just feels like, the guys getting the shout outs are always, it feels like we're talking so much about Alfred Collins, so I guess maybe, I wonder if it's just like with Byron Murphy, they look at him like I do and they say, well, he's out there looking awesome. It's just status quo for him. And that's the case. Right. I know that whenever you talk to NFL scouts, you talk to these NFL agents, I mean, the agents are very interested in Byron Murphy, so I don't know. I guess I would say maybe him. It feels like a lot of the dudes who I'd expected to, I haven't heard much about Jaron Thompson. Have you guys heard much buzz about him?
No, none.
And he's another guy. Maybe it's just no news is good news with that kind of player. It seems like he's been penciled in as the one dude who's going to be the definite starter at safety. But other than that, it feels like you've heard a lot of these guys getting the old catch attaboy, like a lot of these guys have you've heard some good buzz about them. I guess maybe just with Byron Murphy, maybe with Jaron Thompson, guys who, either it's just kind of like the status quo and that's good enough. There's no need to shout these guys out. They're doing their job. That's the job that they're here to do. And that's what's expected of them now. Or it could be, if you're the worrying type, maybe you can worry.
I forgot about the old Attaboy Award. I got to bring those back, Chad. Attaboy Awards are big deals once we get into the season.
Did you have there's a little trophy? Is there like a trophy of a guy on it going, wait,
there should be. Now there should be. Yes. Hey, Alex, one of the things that was, I think the number one obviously I think the number one headline yesterday coming out of the Sarkisian deal was the injuries, right? So we got Jordan Whittington is fine. We got Xavier Worthy returning to practice. After that, Billy Walton going from third team reps, and I think being a guy that most of us would have assumed maybe he plays, but maybe he also redshirts, and now he's on getting at least some reps with the twos. Break down that edge position for us. It's Ethan Burke. It's Billy Walton making a play for some second team run. What's in between those two things?
Well, I mean, I think Jamon Tapp obviously is, somebody that we need to consider. And I just think with guys like Colton Vasek, it just feels like, man, he came in this spring, and you guys know I'm a giant Colton Vasek fan. He's going to be a great player for Texas. But it's just, you can't really paint over the fact that he needs to put on some mass. He needs to put on a little bit of mass to look like some of these other dudes. And it's fine. That's just like people have always said, it's going to take a little bit of development for him. It took a little bit of development for Ethan Burke, another guy that came out of Westlake. So I think he'll be fine. But I think maybe the stuff with Billy Walton, I mean, when you go out there, he looks like he's a little bit, he's pretty defined through his upper shoulders, through his arms. He looks like a dude who's been hitting it hard this summer, and he's a guy who Anwar mentioned in his column on Saturday. That's the only reason I asked one source on Monday about him, is just because Anwar mentioned him. I was like, well, I thought he looked kind of good out there. I thought he looked good physically. He looks like a really good physical specimen. I ain't necessarily seen much. We don't get to see many team drills and stuff out there. So Billy Walton, flying around, that caught my attention. So when I asked about it, they said, well, yeah, he actually got some work with the twos. And so to me, it's probably one of these things. And we see these things catch every year during this time of year where they just try things, or maybe somebody has a good scrimmage where they're rewarded in the week of practices coming up, right? Where they get a little bit of time and maybe it sticks, maybe it fizzles out. Maybe it's just a kind of let's just kind of peek in and see what we have here. And the fact is, at that edge spot, there's no better place to experiment and just see what you have there, because they really, behind Ethan Burke, Ethan Burke doesn't even feel like one of the most established even starters, right? He doesn't. So you look at the rest of these guys you have over there, they've tried Justice Finkley over there. I don't think that's going to work, right? I think Christopher Ross is probably playing over at the other strong side defensive end, right? I think now probably him and Finkley are going to be there behind Sorrell, and you just start to think to yourself, well, if they're going to be trying to get something going over here, it makes sense that maybe that's a dude who you can, he was a good player in high school. We all liked the film. Where did he come from? Was it South Oak Cliff?
Yeah.
Like, that's a good program. Like, he was a really good player for that team. I think that I'm over my skis here, but I think South Oak Cliff were they in the state finals?
Yeah, the state championship teams.
Yeah. So, he's a good player that comes from a good team. He looks big, looks physical. He's doing good. And if he's showing himself out in scrimmages like that, yeah, give him some work with the twos. There's zero opportunity cost.
Alex, one more quick one from me. We've talked to you about the DJ Campbell, Cole Hudson battle at right guard as they come.
I don't think that's even a battle anymore, Chad.
Okay, you're kind of answering. Yeah, coming out of this next scrimmage, would you be shocked if Campbell's not right guard?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
It's his job, from what everybody says. It's just
okay.
That's his job. The interesting thing happening with Cole Hudson, though, is he's working now with the twos, and he's getting some work at center. And so there's something going on with center, because Cole Hudson, I believe, last week before the scrimmage, I heard he was working with the first team at left guard. And I was like, whoa, what's going on with that? And you asked around some other people, talked to Anwar, he called some of his sources. Well, that turns out that was because Hayden Connor was working with the second group at center. And so when Hayden Connor goes to the second group at center, Cole Hudson goes to left guard with the first group. But in the second group, you do get some stuff where even when Hayden Connor's not in there at center, it doesn't always just go back to Connor Robertson. Sometimes it'll be Cole Hudson getting some of those center reps. So now all of a sudden behind Jake Majors, you have not only Hayden Connor, who's been a multi-year, or basically 1 year and then a few games at the end of the season starter. You also now have Cole Hudson, who was a starter all of his freshman year until he was injured, until the very last few games whenever DJ Campbell, while Cole Hudson was still healthy. I think people forget that. The DJ Campbell was starting to kind of take his job a little bit before he even got hurt. But you have a guy like Cole Hudson, who last year played a lot, who Coach Flood obviously likes a lot, who's also getting center reps now. I think that if nothing else, that's got to be lighting a bit of a fire under Jake Majors' ass for sure.
Alex, can I get one more question in, or do you need to go?
No. It's good. I got a thing for the kids at 3, but it's fine.
Okay. Last question then. And it kind of centers around something Chad and I have just been talking about the last couple of days. When Sarkisian did one of his first press conferences of the offseason, and recently, he mentioned that the first scrimmage would be a show me scrimmage, right? So Billy Walton shows him something. Week 2, the second scrimmage that we'll see on Saturday, and yes, Paxton, this will also be in full pads, is the depth chart scrimmage. So it kind of stands to reason that this entire week leading up to Saturday's depth chart scrimmage is a depth chart week. What are the still biggest depth chart decisions you think still need to be made before they have a depth chart?
Well, I think they have a depth chart.
None.
There it is. We'll talk to Alex next week.
Second team safety, right? I think number 2, man, if Derek Williams, like, is he going to be second team safety?
It's all backup positions, right?
Yeah. I'm trying to go through it in my head. I guess you can have some depth chart talk on the interior defensive line. If this Alfred Collins stuff is true, if Alfred Collins and Vernon Broughton are getting work with the ones, to me, it feels like what might have happened with Anwar Source at that practice. It could have been what happens in those first team periods, Ketch, whenever they go through the first team periods, not the second set of team periods, but the first set of them, right? The ones that they go to sometimes like they've done in the past. We haven't seen any live this year, but from what we've seen in the past, sometimes they'll go to those right after stretch, right? And during those, when they go to those, you'll get groupings of guys that might be the second grouping that are in there with all the rest of the starters, right? And so I wonder if maybe Broughton and Collins were in there where they had the second interior defensive line in there with the whole rest of the rest of the first team defense. So that could have been a reason why they were both working with the ones. It feels hard for me to believe that Tavondre Sweat's not going to be with the ones, even if, like, the same with Byron Murphy. So I don't know if that's a battle. That could still be one. Offense, it doesn't feel like that there's anything. Left tackle, no. Left guard, no. Center, I don't feel like anything's imminent, although it feels like there's something maybe brewing there. Right guard, I don't think so. Certainly not right tackle. I mean, I think it's a pretty clear 1A, 1B at tight end. The wide receivers, now that Xavier Worthy's back, it feels like all those guys. I mean, Whittington's locked in. A.D. Mitchell's locked in. Xavier Worthy's locked in. I think Nair did show a lot of nice things whenever Worthy had missed those 2 practices. Quarterback's clearly locked in. Running back feels locked in to start, I guess. But, I mean, we are hearing more and more about C.J. Baxter with the ones. It's the same thing I've been saying, man. It's like that thing could easily happen. So maybe that running back thing is still up in the air, but it feels like among the starters, I mean, there's nothing at linebacker, nothing at the corners, nothing at the starting safeties, nothing at nickel. So, yeah, to me, it feels like the starters are pretty locked in. If we're talking about depth chart stuff, it feels like pieces that could be really important rotational pieces, though, as the kind of the twos as far as the initial depth chart as we kind of get into this next phase of fall camp. And I don't know exactly when the transition will be where they start getting to install for the first game. And that's going to happen pretty soon. And they're going to need to have things in order before then, clearly.
All right, Alex, go be dad. That took like 3 or 4 minutes, so I want to make sure that kids aren't late for 3 o'clock time frames. Alex Dunlap, Orangebloods.com.
Thank you, man. Peace.
Waving goodbye. We'll talk to him, I'm sure, in the next week or two leading up to the season opener. Anything jump out from that, Chad? I mean, it was a big old football meatball sandwich with regards to the information, lots of it. Anything jump to the front of the pack?
First off, to anyone in the social media realm and on Orangebloods Live that's gotten Alex to believe he can't wear that tank top, how dare you? Man gets yoked.
You've made him self-conscious.
The man gets yoked up and in shape and throws on a tank top, and then people make fun of him. I think that's absolutely silly. In terms of what he's saying there, it's interesting to me how definitive he is on that right guard thing, and that's a really cool story for DJ Campbell. But then what that does mean for – I'm always interested in rotation at offensive line. We always talk about it on defensive line, but you just always feel like they're looking for a guy that can give them multiple positions on the O-line if they need it. So all that stuff he was talking about with Hudson and Connor and Robertson and how that moves around. I know that may have been a little confusing for people if they weren't really focused in, but I thought that was fascinating. And then the last feeling you get there, if you're a Longhorn fan, is, yeah, it's pretty set. There are some people that would tell you that when they say it's a battle it's position battle time, that maybe it's not really position battle time. Maybe it's already been figured out. Sounds like a lot of this team is figured out going into this into this scrimmage this weekend.
Yeah, I think for me, it was the thing that I wanted to ask him about right at the top, which was we keep having this Vernon Broughton, Alfred Collins conversation. What does it mean? Well, I think a lot of times we think of starting defensive tackles. We think about the way he talked about Trill Carter at Minnesota a year ago, 70% of the snaps, right? He gets 70, and everybody else is fighting for what's left over after that. When in reality, last year, not a single defensive tackle on the roster hit 50%. Your starters were both in the 40s. Your two backups were both in the 30s. And your two backups to the backups were in the 20s. So whether or not Vernon Broughton or Alfred Collins are actually better or starting to however we're framing whatever this camp has been, if they do what they did a year ago, which is what I think they prefer, they're going to be counting on Vernon Broughton and Alfred Collins to be playing one out of every 3 snaps. It's a big number.
Especially
they better be good, Chad.
Yes, and especially when you consider the snaps, as he laid out, the snaps that you're losing with Coburn and some other guys that aren't on that line. You get that reminder of, oh, yeah, those guys aren't there either. So, yeah, it's got to be
every
big.
5 snaps, those guys are going to be on the field.
And that's why I keep going back to it, Ketch. Did Sark say it just because he woke up believing it? Or did he say it because he knows those numbers, he knows it has to happen, and he knows he has to light the fire under those two? Because he's not going to step up and try to. He knows he doesn't need to light a fire underneath Sweat and Murphy. But he feels like, man, I have got to get these two dudes going. Maybe that's part of it as well. Hopefully, it's all of it.
I was going to say that. Yes, I'm not saying Sarkisian is being disingenuous, right?
Right.
I'm not saying that when he says, oh, these guys, they're playing great. But I also do think there probably is a little bit of talking it into existence.
Yeah, it's like it's self-fulfilling prophecy kind of stuff, I think.
Yeah, and if and when, because they're gonna play.
Yeah.
So if Alfred Collins makes a big play in the Rice game and then makes a big play in the Alabama game, he will publicly tell us, well, yeah. I mean, we saw that coming. That stems from practice, and you can't do it in the games until you start. But I think he exits the press conference, and he's like, whew. It actually is really nice that Alfred Collins has done this thing. And
right.
Whew.
Yeah. And we know, I mean, all parents know it out there, right? If you're trying to get your kid to do more work around the house, and they've started to do a little bit, there's 2 ways to go about it. You can go at it to say, you know what? I see that you're doing some good work. I really think you can get to where we're talking about. Or you go, he's not there yet. Not there yet. Still needs a little work. So maybe he was picking kind of the former version of that, where he's seeing some of it, knows where he wants it to go, but they've just got to step up. So hopefully you get a good indicator out of that coming out of the scrimmage this week, that you're seeing that good, that good rotation that you want. And who knows, maybe we'll hear even more about the Billy Walton story. I kind of like that one too. And we'll see how everything works. Because I'm sure Saturday we'll get a full depth chart, right, Ketch? They're gonna throw a depth chart out to let everybody know as soon as the scrimmage is done, right? Isn't that how that works?
You know what? Sarkisian watching today's show today probably wishes he could jump through the screen and definitely strangle me.
Yeah.
Because
maybe
he doesn't want guys' names being talked about as, well, they're not doing enough. It's like, well, how do you know, Ketch? You're not there. And it's like, well, you hadn't mentioned them.
You didn't say his name either.
Don't get mad at me. You haven't mentioned those names.
Yeah.
It'll be really just now moving forward, knowing that I kind of knew those data points, but obviously I didn't have them on lockdown. And then Alex read them out. It kind of surprised me to hear that the 5th and the 6th guy was still getting above 25% snaps.
Yeah.
But a part of it is where's Trill Carter? It's going to go from getting 70% of snaps at Minnesota to the inverse, 25%-ish at Texas, unless there's an injury. Obviously, Texas boosts its depth, right? They get a guy who is playing 7 out of every 10 snaps at the Big Ten level. But I wonder if that guy knew I don't know. Like he had
and
to have
maybe-
known that Sweat and Murphy were both there.
Yeah.
It's not
Well,
like he
maybe-
could have been oblivious to the numbers that existed. I think Trill Carter would have thought Alfred Collins and Vernon Broughton, I'm coming for your cornbread.
Right. Well, how about this? If deep down, maybe Sark could explain it to him this way. If he knows that people like Alex Dunlap are watching his film and they're not seeing much, you tell Trill Carter, look, dude, you're playing 7 out of every 10 plays at Minnesota. Nobody's noticing you. I'm going to take those 3 plays. It may be the inverse, but we are going to go quality over quantity here.
Yep.
They're going to notice your plays. You're going to put our stuff on, and they're going to notice you in a way you were not getting noticed with
You're
that
getting
row.
tired coming out of halftime.
Yeah, right. You were working too hard to row that boat. So come here, and we're going to give you some big-time plays, and you'll show off. Trust me.
No, it's a great point, Chad. And you know what? There may be something to that. Trill Carter, let's say he gets a little bit more than last year's 5th or 6th. Maybe it's like 30 somewhere. Maybe at 30. Maybe it caps out at like 33%. But that means over the course of a game, on a day when the defense is playing against 70 snaps, you're getting 25 of them. And it might be the thing that gets you to the next level, being able to just be great and as high as you can go for 33 snaps a game instead of 70. And it might make all the difference in the world for a guy like that. I suddenly today am thinking slightly different about the defensive tackle position than maybe I was, because I now look at Sark's remarks, and I do think there is a little bit of, it ain't going to happen unless we all believe it's going to happen. And by God, we actually do need to believe that this is going to happen, because it has to happen.
Yeah, it's got to. Right. It absolutely has to. Ketch, before we wrap up here, couple of little notes. And we started the show talking about Zack Martin, obviously going to be with the Cowboys. That's big that he's back in Oxnard. Dalvin Cook to the Jets, Ezekiel Elliott to the Patriots. That's all been discussed today. Let me get you a quick little Aggie note before we get out of here, if you don't mind. Because we were talking about the tight end deal, right? With Green. I just lost his name. That's sad that I just lost his name. Donovan Green. Thank you. The Donovan Green injury, most experienced guy's not going to be there with an ACL. So just a couple things to keep in mind. Jake Johnson now becomes the focus. Max Johnson's brother, Brad Johnson's kid. He only had 1 catch last year. 1. So he's got to ramp up fast. The other thing that has to happen to me is one of 2 things has to happen for Bobby Petrino. Either he leans hard on those receivers and just makes this a receiver-focused offense, or he needs to weaponize one of 2 guys, Max Wright or Jaden Platt, a freshman. Jaden Platt out of Hazlet, Texas. Apparently,
I like Jaden Platt.
Looking pretty good, apparently. 6'5", 245. He fits the profile, but he's from a smaller school, but he's a 4-star guy. And it's when you and I hadn't talked about him. The fact that you knew who he was when I said his name tells me a little bit.
Platt. Yeah, he's a good player.
That's a guy that maybe needs to be weaponized more. And then for Max Wright, Max had 9 catches all last year, 129 yards and a touchdown. Ketch, he is the stereotypical flex tight end. He's that blocking flex tight end, hard working. You know what he is. You can see him in your mind, whatever fan base you are, right? So Max Wright is that guy that's the blocking tight end, but can you do a little more with him? He's been there forever. 6th year, 6-year super senior for Max Wright. He started on defense, and now he's to this side of the ball. That tells you what kind of guy he was. Can they get him a couple more catches? He averaged 14 a catch last year, 9 for 129, not terrible. So can they do him? You get a little more from him. There's also a cat named Theo Orstrom from Sweden. They say he's learning American football, but as I say that, we all know what I'm saying there. Like, are you really going to be counting on that guy? So A&M's tight end position is really interesting for me, Ketch, moving forward with this huge injury. It starts with Johnson, but they have got to figure out something to go with it if they really want to go like 2 tight end sets, Jimbo Fisher offense. Either you better dial those dudes up, or you got to lean in hard on your receivers, and I'd tell you to go 3 and 4 and maybe even 5 wide sometimes.
So, Chad, here's what I would tell you about Jaden Platt.
Okay.
Number 2 tight end in last year's recruiting class in the state of Texas.
Yes, and flipped
So
to the Aggies real late.
Yeah,
From what I understand.
I wonder if they was committed to Stanford.
Correct. Stanford. They flipped him literally like signing day, I think.
So Kamorian Pimpton goes to LSU. He's just a big old monster, like 6'6", 230.
Yeah.
I had Platt rated as a 4-star guy, number 36 in the state. It's funny. I'm always accused of being a homer for the Longhorns, and I hate on all of the Aggie guys. I had Platt rated at 36th. Rivals.com had him at 50. This is in the state of Texas.
Okay.
Rivals had him at 50. ESPN had him at 59. On3 had him at 61. I had him at 36. So I like the kid. I think he's raw.
Yeah.
But I don't think the Aggies are in desperation mode. I don't think he's that far. He couldn't be that far behind Donovan Green.
Okay.
Well, I think as a football player.
And the other thing here, that just feeds back into the Bobby Petrino narrative. If you want to just focus on the jokes, that's one thing. But the football narrative with Petrino, that offense has to look less clunky this year, right? Doesn't it have to be less clunky just with Bobby Petrino walking in the door?
It has to be because your quarterback play is going to be better. I mean, it's the same conversation with Quinn Ewers. Yeah. Another year, that guy should be better. By the way, I shouldn't toot my horn too much. 24/7 had Platt rated as the number 20 prospect in the state of Texas, so higher than I did.
Okay.
They had him at nationally at number 100. So,
well, that may need to happen.
Just looking at 24/7's rankings, and we were talking about Jaden Platt, he might already be a guy that you were thinking, we got to get Platt on the field this year because he might be the future of that position. I'd forgotten about Platt. That's a really good sneaky get for A&M last year, and he's going to be an important player for them this year. Ready or not, they need him to give them something.
It's a name that wasn't blinking at me 2-3 days ago, but it's blinking at me now. I'm interested
Let me do some deep diving on Jaden Platt.
Yeah.
Bring up that huddle film. What did Ketch say about him?
What's that Jaden Platt film? Where is that? 18 days away from that first game, of course, for Texas and Rice. A&M starts with New Mexico. And then, of course, week 2, we're all looking forward to September 9th. A&M at Miami, followed by Texas at Bama. It's going to be a hell of a day.
Put it up, Blake.
Hey, how about that?
Let's see what it looks like when there's not a zero. No.
How about that? Oh,
no.
I mean,
No, I haven't said a word. We're at a day.
He didn't say anything, right?
We're at a day.
Excellent.
So I still haven't said the word.
Excellent job. Excellent job.
Matter of fact, Chad, I made a point to not say any words that start with the letter L.
Is that right?
Show.
That's excellent. That's good. That is good. That's growth is what that is. Growth. Very nice. Very nice. Very, very nice. And you got to wake up today and see my foreigner gift because I sent you a video of them singing I've Been Waiting for a Girl Like You.
I love that the video went just long enough that I could hear him go, yeah, waiting.
Yes. And by the way, he is so good. I did not expect to be that impressed. Kelly Hansen is his name. He was in a band called Hurricane way back in the day. They had one little hit that I am familiar with. And I was listening to that voice last night and I'm like, do I know this guy? It's a good, powerful voice. And he's the dude that sang I'm On to You from Hurricane. Oh my God. I love that, making the little musical connections like that. But Foreigner was great last night. So good. I'm glad I got to check them off the list. And I've enjoyed the show today. Good, fast-paced show. We're almost done here. Rod Babers is coming up at 3, ready to rock and roll. And then, I'm told there may be a test show tonight, Ketch, for this Outsiders idea. You better watch out now. Could be some craziness tomorrow night. Hey, you know what? You know who didn't have a test show? Us.
We did not.
Say what you want about these weirdo outsider guys wanting to come on and say whatever they want, though. We didn't test show, but they want a test show.
We got to go. Rod Babers. I got ice to chew, and Rod Babers has a show to do.
I'm sorry. Catches Crunching Ice. Rod Babers has got Rodcast coming up, and we'll be back tomorrow for a Wednesday show. All right? Is that good? Here we go. Wrap it up, Aggie.
No,
See
I was
ya.
getting. I'm setting you up.